Greetings, citizens of the internet, or whatever the hell this is. My name is Lori Lightfoot, and I have commandeered this channel to let you know that I completely disapprove of the content that is on this platform. And I hope that you agree with me, so that if you do, make sure that you are not supporting this channel by going to patreon.com/Chicago Corner. Whatever you do, avoid this channel's Patreon at all costs. My re-election is counting on you, and I hope that if we can all do things that are... I'm losing my train of thought, and I have no idea why the hell I'm still on this broadcast.
It's 106 miles to Chicago. We got a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark, and we're wearing sunglasses. Hit it.
How could you possibly even consider running for re-election as mayor of the city of Chicago after all the harm you caused?
I disagree with you fundamentally, and I don't think I need to address it and dignify your comments 1 second further. Next question.
Got another candidate today with Alderman Sawyer, just kind of reaction and maybe any kind of hints about when you might make a decision?
So, another day, another man who thinks he can do his job better than me. I'm just going to keep doing my work. I'm not going to worry about the folks who are jumping in. I think I feel very comfortable with the list of accomplishments. And what I got to do is just keep telling our story.
Now, I've directed Superintendent Brown to order all police districts to give special attention to these parties. And this is how it's going to be. We will shut you down. We will cite you. And if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
It makes no sense for us to be increasing the speeds around parks and schools when we know what the horrific consequences are. I'm not going to get into the specifics. We continue to work with NASCAR to make sure that we minimize the disruption to traffic and that we minimize any damage to our roads. The level of excitement that I have seen from people that, frankly, were probably closeted NASCAR fans all across our city, I think it's off the charts.
Your office says that you invited black and brown journalists to this round of interview. Why?
As a woman of color, as a lesbian, it's important to me that diversity is put front and center.
What a fucking bitch, am I right?
We have the responsibility to review this process in an administration that is more worried about campaign contributions than doing the right thing for the city of Chicago.
You are out of order. You are out of order.
And
you are a liar. You are a liar, sir, and you are out of order. I sit here and I will not tolerate you besmirching the hard work of so many people who have worked in this. You may not agree. You may not agree, then vote no. I'm very confident in my reelection, and I'm very confident that what you will see is a range of support across the city. Any vote coming on the side for somebody not named Lightfoot is a vote for Chewy Garcia or Paul Bell.
That's it.
If you want them controlling your fate and your destiny, then stay home. Then don't vote.
Take your torches and go!
Are you, as an incumbent, running as an underdog?
No, look, well, first of all, I'm a black woman. I'm always running as an underdog. Let's just be clear about that. I'm feeling very good. A lot of people that we saw over the course of the weekend in different parts of the city said that they were going to honor their normal tradition in voting on Election Day. So I'm excited about that. 4 years ago this time, polling showed that I was about 1%. And, you know, there were bigger names in, more money, and here I sit.
Stunning defeat for Mayor Lightfoot, who got just over 16% of the vote.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. You will stop speaking. You will stop speaking. You're full of crap, and that's the nicest thing that I can say.
Thanks to everyone that made it out to the polls and didn't follow our despised former Mayor Lori Lightfoot's advice that if you weren't going to vote for her, don't go out to the polls. 16% in one of the larger turnouts in recent years. I still understand the voting turnout was low, but for the primary, it got the job done. So anyway, you know who I am, hopefully. I'm your host of Chicago Corner. Welcome to another Friday night edition. Before we go too deep into the mud with our former Mayor Lori Lightfoot, I want to welcome my co-host for the evening, Mr. Edward Heller.
Oh, good evening, Jerry. It's such a wonderful Friday, I got to tell you.
Are you surviving that snowstorm?
We didn't get any snow. It's all south of us. I know the weather people were hesitating to even mention that it was like a warning. They kept saying, well, it's a watch because
were they?
We have no.
Because I've been hearing all week long from my mom not to go out today because it was going to snow. And I spoke with a friend of mine this morning who was telling me that she was going out to Sam's Club to stock up on groceries because they were worried about the 6 or 7 inches of snow that were going to snow us in this weekend.
Well, Demetrius Ivory on WGN was on one of their live streams the other day. I think it was yesterday, talking to their web streaming guy, reporter, and he was basically telling you, he's like, well, we got to tell people that they kind of have to prepare, but we're not really ready to say that we're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. And so you kind of have to have the watch, but you don't really want to jump on the warning. And I'm like, yeah, it's probably because they really don't know. They don't.
It's a job where you only have to be right 50% of the time, and you're not.
Yeah.
I mean, look, meteorology is a science. It's supposed to be a science, and I would imagine that those that study it and go on television and act as weathercasters, I don't know that they're the ones specifically analyzing the weather, but even on a larger front, the National Weather Service that's supposed to report all of its findings as it investigates wind patterns and weather patterns and stuff, and still half the time they are only responsible for getting it right. I'm just glad we don't have the snow. I just think, I
just had a thought, and and by the way, it wasn't 16%, Jerry. It was 17%.
I stand corrected, madame.
But I was thinking,
lightweight.
I mean, I don't really need to hold any animosity toward people anymore. And for me being wrong, like at least half the time, if not more, I'm thinking maybe I need to start a career in meteorology.
Well, you know, you are on LinkedIn now, so I would imagine you've got the search engine there to look for weather casting jobs.
Yeah. Fair weather Lori.
Fair weather Lori.
Follow me on LinkedIn.
What a week. When we reported on Tuesday and we're following the coverage, and she conceded early. I was like, okay, our job's done. We can shut down Chicago Corner and move on. Although that's not really the case, because we seem to have one more big battle brewing or fight for the soul of the city. And what do I mean by that? Well, let me share this interesting tweet that I found on the Twitter tubes, which I thought was a fantastic graphic. Chicago mayoral election 1983 versus 2023. And it struck me because we were kind of alluding to this last Tuesday as well. I'm glad others, are sensing the same thing. I've said several times to a lot of people that the thing about Vallis is that he's dog whistling fear by constantly talking about the police and putting CPD on steroids, kind of similar to our former Republican candidate that he's pictured with there, Bernie Epton, who used to actually pose in front of Chicago police cars while he was campaigning against our beloved late Mayor Harold Washington. And what's especially interesting in that graphic on Twitter is that, Bernie Epton may be dead, but I'm sure that his barber and stylist is making out pretty well, because I think Palos privatizer Paul goes to the same barber and shops at the same men's warehouse.
Maybe Epton left all of his suits to him in his will. I don't know.
And his grooming accoutrement to shave the head and trim the beard, and
if he's got a frequent grooming card, maybe he left it to him.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. Some of the parallels that we feel reflect a very kind of a similar matchup in the underdog, who is, we sense, fighting more for the best of the people of Chicago, and the people who are afraid and want a big daddy authoritarian beefing up the police department. And, with the undercurrent of crime equaling Negroes, kind of being the undercurrent, I think, with a lot of Vallis's supporters. They're all afraid of crime. It's like, you know what? Hide under your beds then. Because Paul Vallis beefing up the Chicago Police Department, if beefing up the police were the solution, Chicago would be the safest city in the world. It's not, with all the money we've thrown at them. With the new police academy, with ramping up their budget, with 70% of federal COVID relief funds paying for their overtime a few years back. Sorry, doesn't work. And we've said it a million times. But Ed, I see backstage here you have a story queued now. Is this breaking news regarding our first story, or is this other?
It's the video from the first story.
Okay, so first story of the night. Let's pop that up. I think it's funny. I think that Superintendent Brown was on LinkedIn maybe around the same time, or perhaps before Lori Lightfoot created her profile there, because right on the heels of Lightfoot's defeat, Superintendent Brown resigned. Frowny face.
We begin with breaking news this afternoon. Chicago's top cop, David Brown, announces he's leaving the department. It comes one day after his boss, Lori Lightfoot, lost her bid for re-election. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Bradley.
And I'm Lourdes Duarte. The superintendent says he has accepted a job in the private sector back in Texas. WGN's Julian Cruz is live at police headquarters this afternoon with more on that. Julian.
Well, Lourdes and Ben, Superintendent David Brown in a written statement saying that his resignation will be effective March 16, 2023. He says he is stepping down in order to give the incoming mayor, so the incoming mayor can begin the process of hiring the next superintendent of the Chicago Police Department. Now, the embattled Brown, enduring harsh criticism from the mayoral candidates during the campaign, Paul Vallis making it clear that he planned to fire Brown, Brandon Johnson, both faces Vallis in the April mayoral runoff, also making it clear that he planned to fire Brown as well as to shake up the Chicago Police Department. Now,
he saw the writing on the wall there.
And he's working security for a law firm that will probably also help protect him from any lawsuits that he's named in for his absolute dereliction of duty. As
he's going back to Texas, right?
Yeah. From whence he came, with not the most sterling police record there either. We reported on this like months ago. I think it was last year, that it was never disclosed to City Council that he had a jacket back in Texas where a couple of questionable, I don't know if it was a suspension, But there was some bad behavior there that wasn't disclosed to city council when they were vetting him, when Lori shoved him down theirs and our throats.
Well, it's that, it's that thing where they have all the different police departments all over the country. They basically shuffle the police superintendents around like they shuffle all the bad cardinals around in the Vatican.
And the way they're going to shuffle Lightfoot off probably somewhere else within the Democratic machine, whether they decide to run her for governor now that she's gone, and eventually Congress, as we talked about with Shane Coughlin from Kerberos Media last year.
Written statement released by David Brown a short while ago. He says, quote, "I will continue to pray that all officers return home to their families safe at the end of their shift. May the good Lord bless the city of Chicago, the men and women who protect this city." Now, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who of course lost her re-election bid yesterday, thanking David Brown for his hard work during the crime surge that our city has endured, praising his efforts to remove a record number of guns off the streets, she says. Now, in a written statement released by Mayor Lightfoot, she says, quote,
"First Deputy Eric Carter will be appointed as interim superintendent until the new mayor is sworn into office."
First Deputy Eric Carter will be appointed as interim superintendent until the new mayor is sworn into office.
That's just what I
said.
said.
Commission for Public Safety and Accountability to immediately begin the search for a new superintendent so that a new hire can be made. Now, a reminder, there is a new process for replacing Chicago police superintendents. This from the Commission for Public Safety and Accountability. So this agency will play a role in helping the incoming mayor select the next superintendent of police. So breaking news once again, 62-year-old David Brown resigning from his position effective March 16th. At the Public Safety Building, Julian Cruz, WGN News.
Now, on that matter of police safety, I mean, clearly we all wish for the safety of our good Chicago police officers, and I guess the bad ones too. It would be remiss not to mention, unfortunately, there was a tragedy this week right on the heels of Election Day. A Chicago police officer, Andre Vasquez Lasso, was killed in front of Sawyer Elementary School. Now, I bring that story up. We weren't going to cover it in very much detail tonight. It's a tragedy. It happens all too often. Police officers shot, unarmed civilians shot, goes both ways. But I do want to really quickly, send our sincere condolences to the family of Officer Vasquez Lasso and read a little bit from Block Club Chicago as reported by Kelly Bauer, because they do have the shooter in custody. His name was Stephen Montano, 18, and he will be held without bail at a Friday hearing as he faces a murder charge in the slaying of Officer Andre Mauricio Vasquez Lasso. Children had to scramble for cover on a school playground as a man shot and killed a Chicago police officer Wednesday and then tried to walk away despite being shot himself, prosecutors said. Judge ordered Stephen Montana, 18, to be held without bail at a Friday hearing as he faces a murder charge of the slaying of Officer Andre Mauricio Vasquez Lasso. Prosecutor said Montano had gotten into an argument with his girlfriend who called police, leading to a chase and the fatal shooting. Now, a lot of people are going to argue, well, this is why you have to, beef up the Chicago Police Department, spend more money on cops. I read some overtures that this guy Montana potentially had gang affiliations. Now, Montano, who was shot in his head during the shootout with Vasquez Lasso, remains hospitalized in critical condition at Stroger. A prosecutor said he was not at the hearing. The solution is not to throw more money at the police department. The police department clearly had no control over what this guy decided he was going to do, Montano. And unfortunately, Ed, I see the sad timing of this unfortunate incident, going to be seized by Palos Paul and his supporters and the Fraternal Order of Police to just strengthen their argument that Palos Paul is going to make us all safe. Constitutional conservative texted me and said the reason he's supporting Vallis is because Vallis is going to, wave his wand and suddenly Chicago's going to be safe. Again, if spending money and beefing up police was the solution, Chicago would already been safe, and it's not. Nor is any other city that's just pouring millions into their police budgets without getting to the root causes of crime. Now, I'm not going to say that the root cause of crime with this guy, pouring money into trying to fight the root causes of crime would have changed this outcome. But let's not wipe that off the table when we know that there are a lot more people, there are a lot more desperate people that unfortunately, drift to crime because we're not funding their communities. We're not providing more mental health support. We're not providing job opportunities. We're not investing in the infrastructure of those neighborhoods. Go back to any Chicago Corner show. We've talked about this ad nauseum. And Kathy said this is probably a domestic violence incident. Yeah. By the way, I want to thank Kathy Powers, as well as Dr. Howard Ehrman, Shane Coughlin, Joey Locasio, and of course, Dominic Palella for supporting us on Patreon. They are our Patreon supporters. I would encourage all of you, if you're quick on that button, Ed.
Not quick enough.
You're there at the same time. If you like the show, please subscribe to us, share our channel, and you can support us on Patreon at Patreon/Chicago Corner. So your thoughts on the unfortunate timing with this shooting, and then another interview that you're going to share with Brandon Johnson regarding exactly that point we're talking about here right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Or do you want to bring that video up? Because Johnson's there was.
Well, I mean, I had a tweet where this guy is retweeting that video from Johnson, a guy named Ed Mullen, who is a civil rights lawyer, and he basically echoes a little bit of what you were saying. He says if more police was the answer to public safety, Chicago would be the safest place in America.
I think that's where I got the quote. I don't remember.
Yeah. He said we need to think differently about what public safety means and how to achieve it. And Brandon understands that. So I guess he's supporting Brandon. So,
and this video interview you're going to bring up kind of speaks to that from Twitter.
Yeah.
It's Johnson on the police. And by the way, everybody, cheers to the demise as we dance on the grave of Lori Lightfoot's administration. I wish Lori Lightfoot no ill will. I'm just glad she's gone. I voted for her last time. She fooled us all.
Look, if they follow through with the NASCAR race, I hope they at least give her a nice seat to watch it from.
I hope
but
they
otherwise,
passenger seat without a seatbelt's what I hope if they bring that monstrosity to Chicago.
Yeah, strap her to the hood of one of the cars. I don't know.
Like,
front row seat,
She wanted it. Yeah, let's give her a real front row seat. Strap her to the hood of one of the NASCARs.
Yeah, I know. That's cruel, but, it's kind of funny at the same time.
It is.
The type of violence that we're seeing across the country is really the direct result of disinvestment. There was a scripture that was referenced earlier, and I appreciate Reverend Al for bringing it up. So my scripture today is, where your heart is, your treasure will be also. And because of disinvestment, we have not done what safe American cities do across the country. They all have one thing in common. They invest in people. And, Reverend Al, I grew up in a sanctified home for whatever it's worth. My father was a pastor and a carpenter. Do you understand the pressure when your father is just like Jesus? It's a lot of pressure going on in that home.
That might be a step too far. And,
it's his campaign joke line.
But he's pandering in ways that are probably going to be like shooting himself in the foot. He needs better. I think he needs a little bit better advice from his campaign strategist.
Yeah. Well, he said the same thing at his speech after Lightfoot had dropped out, and so I mean, it's a pretty good line. His father was a pastor and a carpenter. I mean, how do you not make that connection? I mean,
okay. So the faithful would probably embrace that, right? The same faithful, do you think they would or they wouldn't? The devout.
Well, I think so. And I think it's actually pretty good for him to keep using that rhetoric strategically, because a lot of the people who have like a huge fear of the crime wave and all of this stuff, there may be a lot of them that are on, kind of on the religious side. And so maybe he'll grab some voters away from Vallis.
I just find it interesting when I speak to some devout people who are very judgmental regarding some people that I don't think we should bear judgment against. I always, say, hey, well, I don't understand why you're passing judgment. Jesus hung out with hookers and the scum of the earth, and they take offense at that. It's like the truth. Why would you be offended by a statement of alleged fact if Jesus Christ existed? And while this, someone else in Brandon's case is comparing his father to Jesus Christ. It's a whole other interesting topic of conversation we could all talk about over drinks that we're not going to delve into here. But I just think that
I think we're going to have one of those Rockfin shows one of these days, and we're just going to tell it like it is on that show. But
I think some of that pandering could be a liability, though. I guess I think some will make it a liability, and that's what I'm concerned about, because we're on a precipice here. The good news is we had 2 bits of good news. Lightfoot was out, and we have a progressive candidate. The bad news is he's facing up against a privatizing white guy who's gonna use all the dog whistles to get people to think that crime's going to go up, because we might potentially be electing a black radical extremist black mayor, which is how they painted Harold Washington back in 1983.
They're going to do it anyway. I would recommend that Brandon Johnson just step up his game a bit, and he's going to need the help from some of the other candidates.
And we're going to get into
the race.
Yep.
And should I play the rest of this?
Please, yeah.
But he raised us with those principles and values that we are only as strong as the person who is struggling the most. And so where there's particular ailment, if you don't address it, that begins to affect the rest of the body. And so that's why my plan, a very sweeping public safety plan and a budget plan that gets at the root causes of the violence in the city of Chicago and the root causes that we're seeing all over the country. But we're dealing with the immediate crisis. Part of our public safety plan, we're going to promote 200 more detectives from within the rank and file so that they can begin to solve.
Also, I have a new idea, Ed. When I do this, so I don't have to interrupt, that'll need pause.
Okay.
That'll be our signals from now. I'll do that. Because
all right, I'll have to pay closer attention. I'm not. Sometimes if I'm not watching us, I'm watching other things on the screen. But yeah, I'll keep an eye out for that.
I'm sorry. Well, then I'll say pause it too. I just thought we were trying to figure out signals that we could send to telegraph to each other. So isn't it interesting? He is talking about adding some police, and that's being missed by everybody that's in support of Palos Paul. Another thing. I would imagine that all of the conservatives who have an extreme religious bent would be swarming around Mr. Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, based on the fact he is devout. And he does rely a lot on the example that was set in his household with his father, who was the pastor. Isn't it interesting? The hyper-moral and religious conservatives completely ignore this when they should be embracing it. Another little bit of hypocrisy I find interesting, but go on.
Solve the violence that takes place in the city of Chicago, but we have a consent decree that has been ignored. And so we're going to spend to make sure that we are implementing that with all expediency. And so, again, where your treasure is, of course, your heart will be also. And so as the mayor of the city of Chicago, I'm committed to investing in people, because that's really what's going to get us out of this particular state of violence and the type of trauma that people have been experiencing for too long in this city. But really, it's been a national problem, and I'm prepared to address it head on, because I have the lived experience of people across this country, and especially here in Chicago, that the best investment we can make, of course, is in our young people. And I mentioned earlier, I've been a middle school teacher, which, by the way, because I did not become a pastor, I became a middle school teacher. If you know anything about 12 and 13 and 14-year-olds, Reverend Al, I definitely get to go to heaven no matter what. So, and now those same students, I have to go back to them and ask for their vote. So it's amazing how the world shifts.
Yeah, I think the other part of this is that he's talking to Reverend Al. So obviously he's going to lean toward the rhetoric that's more along the lines of talking Jesus and that kind of stuff. So it makes a little more sense that he's doing that on this show. I mean, we're going to see a bit of that rhetoric continue throughout the campaign, no doubt. And we'll see if that works for him.
Now, speaking of endorsements, especially from other candidates that were really, really doing their best to rally out the youth vote. I'm waiting for my Twitter screen to load up here. One of our other favorites, our alternate favorite to Commissioner Brown, was entrepreneur and activist Mr. Jamal Green. Now, as I'm waiting for this tweet to come up, I'll bring the screen up in a moment. Jamal has not endorsed anyone yet. And Jamal was very, very focused on getting out the youth vote. Now, Jamal has made some comments on Twitter as to why he has not chosen to endorse anyone yet. And I will share that as soon as the damn Twitter screen comes up, so I can share what he was quoted as saying. Here we go. And you know I'm a fan of Jamal. So I do have a little bit of concern with this. Jamal said, I can give you 10 reasons why both of them fall short. I've known both of them for many years and had thousands of conversations with both. I'm not talking from perception. Respect me wanting to hear both. Truly, I'm not comfortable with Fraternal Order of Police or Chicago Teachers Union influencing the city. Give me space. Okay, fair enough. Jamal has every right to space, but not when suddenly former Secretary of State Jesse White, a fellow brother, decides to jump out and endorse Vallis, appealing to probably the older demographic of black voters and Democrats throughout the state of Illinois.
Because who doesn't remember Jesse White being Secretary of State for a majority of voters? Exactly.
Now, as reported by Greg Pratt over at Twitter, Chicago mayor candidate Paul Vallis gets Jesse White's endorsement right out of the gate. In upcoming runoff election, a real symbolic boost as Vallis tries to gain black support. Likely portends that Chicago's black political establishment is going to face real divisions here. And we kind of touched upon this in Tuesday's show about the African-American community coalescing around. Luckily I was wrong. It didn't happen. I thought Garcia was going to win because I thought that the black vote was going to get split amongst all the different candidates. Luckily that didn't happen. But when you got Jesse White, who everybody knows and to a large degree respects, his office was never tainted by any corruption that I can remember. And we've got, Jamal, taking a little bit of time to mull over this. The comment that someone had posed to him was, I get what you're saying, but you were at the debates and forums. You know the difference between the two candidates. And as a young leader who so many of us, even Gen X people like me, look up to, it seems like, Vallis isn't what Chicago needs.
He deleted a tweet.
Jamal did? Or
the link, Jamal.
Oh, yeah. I actually tried bringing that up, and I saw that page
Unless
doesn't
it's
exist.
missing a number.
No, I think that I think we copied it, right? Yeah, there was another tweet by Jamal that referenced the fact that only Paul Vallis had called him. But then he updated that tweet and said that Commissioner Johnson had called him also. But he had not yet made a decision. Now, this could be a strategy. We've said many times, you've said this too, Ed. Wouldn't it be great to have co-mayors? Wouldn't it be great for Jamal to join forces with Commissioner Johnson as a advisor, some kind of seat at the table, because they both stood up for a lot of the same things. So I understand there's political maneuvering here. I'm sure that perhaps Mr. Green is waiting for a bigger seat at that table to be able to help guide and advise Johnson in ways we think that they would both be, a superhero team up on the fifth floor. But Jamal, we love you, man. Don't wait too long, because when you got Jesse White, here rallying others from your community, the most abandoned community in the city of Chicago, get on the phone with Johnson quick and figure out what your commonalities are, because this does not bode well unless you're prepared to deal with 4 years of Vallis, because that's what this kind of stuff is guiding us towards. Privatization under that Vallis is going to roll in like a steamroller to serve all of his shadow donors that we're going to be talking about in our next story. All of those that contributed to his campaign, and they've also removed the contribution limit now because he loaned himself $100,000. So you're going to tell me that Palos Paul isn't going to be courting all the money from all these rich fucks like Ken Griffin, who threw money into Vallis's campaign to allow Palos Paul to run ads 24/7 by media. The fucker never even lived in Chicago up through last March. To bamboozle,
and that's
the way Lightfoot bamboozled people and Ron before her. Go ahead, Ed.
And when Paul Vallis makes a donation of his own money just to break the cap, it tells you what kind of person he is. Because he doesn't want to win on the merits. He wants to win on who has the most cash flowing in to run all those terrible mudslinging ads on TV and radio.
Yeah,
so do you really want him to be mayor?
Well, look, he used the loophole of residency to rent an apartment in Bridgeport, okay, so that he could get on the ballot while his wife is taking care of their sick in-laws at the house they've got in Palos Heights with the homestead exemption. That on its face right there should tell people what kind of ethics Paul Vallis has. He carpetbags city to city to serve rich interests that here in Chicago, forget about any money going towards treatment, not trauma. All the money that the privatization is going to bring in is going to go to beefing up the police department. A public bank to help solve our problems, forget it. Forget it. That he's going to be Rom 3.0, 3 inches taller. That's what you're going to get with Palos Paul. Okay? Palos Paul, the privatizer.
Yeah, at least
I can't scream it from I can't scream it from the rooftops enough. And I'll tell you, Ed, I'm getting a lot of pushback from Greeks. Why are you ashamed of your race? Why are you not supporting this Greek guy? I don't vote on identity politics. Isn't it interesting? Yeah. Remember in the early
and then you get you also get people who are pretending they're not using identity politics to make their choice and trying to come up with any other excuse other than the fact that he is this particular thing that I identify with.
Exactly.
And
he's white, he's Greek, he's for the police. Sorry, all of those who decry Lori Lightfoot's identity politics, you're now playing the same game. The same game. It's identity, it's tribal. You're not looking at the merits of Vallis or the lack of merits of Vallis. And should I forget the fact that he did not investigate the sexual abuse allegations that happened while he was CEO of Chicago Public Schools? And for everybody that is talking about, well, okay, so specifically, and I'm going to call him out on this too. Love you, Jamal, but to say that he's not comfortable with Fraternal Order of Police or Chicago Teachers Union influencing the city, I think it's very important to have the Chicago Teachers Union have a bigger seat at the table influencing the city. Reason? Everybody relies on the teachers to not only teach, but babysit their children. They've been marginalized. They've been villainized. People spit on the Chicago Teachers Union while they, applaud the Chicago Police Department. You know what? If it weren't for the teachers or it weren't for the fact that the public schools are so underfunded, maybe you'd have less desperate kids drifting towards crime. I'm not saying it's the main reason, but I think this speaks to when I hear so many people screaming about the teachers union, I'm like, yeah, because you just don't want to pay them a fair wage. People look at teachers like slaves. They are supposed to be there to take care of our kids. And I completely disagree. I have so much respect for teachers. I know how much work that goes into teaching kids. I've got 2 cousins who are teachers, and I respect the hell out of them. I know the work they put in. I know the work that all teachers put in. So, Jamal, when you say you don't want CTU influencing the city, I don't think they had enough influence on the city.
I think there might be a concern that they just don't want any particular group having too much power in the city, because even the CTU, Teachers Union, is capable of making mistakes in some of the things that they do, without getting into too many details about the lockdown and the remote learning and all of that other stuff that some parents disagreed with how they went about some of that. So I can see why he might have a little hesitation as to whether he should support someone who's full in on CTU politics, but it doesn't necessarily mean that Brandon is going to do every single thing that the CTU wants him to do.
Right.
He seems to be fairly open-minded as far as input on what he should be doing as mayor. So maybe take advantage of the fact that he's capable of doing that and call him back, Jamal.
Yeah.
And don't wait too long, like Jerry said.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is the amount of time that Mr. Green might make to, I guess, find common ground with Commissioner Johnson. We listened to both of them at the forums, and I remember some moments where they seemed to get along pretty well. I know it got a little bit ugly at the end with some mudslinging when it was coming down to the wire. But gentlemen, you both have the best interests of Chicago at heart. And, I think as this person on Twitter responded to Jamal, it seems like that Vallis isn't the choice Chicago needs, whether he called you first or not. And I don't see Jamal supporting Vallis, but I think the amount of time it takes for him to give some kind of an endorsement, especially to the voters, the young voters, that didn't come out as much.
To that comment that you just had up on the screen from Kathy Powers, New Orleans has about 3 public schools left, and they're special needs public schools. It's about 99% charter schools because of Paul Vallis. Not great.
And that's what he wants to bring to Chicago. And I've had text messages from connections that live in the suburbs who have a real opinion about Paul Vallis, who don't even live in Chicago, talking about how, they don't want to see the Chicago Teachers Union take away the choice of parents to put their kids in private or charter schools, to which I respond, all schools throughout the city of Chicago should have the same level of quality to serve all students the same way. You shouldn't have to pay for a private or a charter school for your kid to get a better education. Maybe the solution is reallocating those resources that are going to the police department to Chicago public schools to make sure every kid is getting an equal education, not just because you live in a more affluent neighborhood than a kid on the south or the west side of the city.
Yeah, and any number of community or school or related programs that could help keep kids out of trouble, train them into maybe a future job, or show them skills, life skills in one way or another.
Or trades are very, very well paying too. For all of the claptrap we get about go spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to college, how many kids are coming out of college with their bachelor's degrees and they cannot find work? But you know what? Plumbers, electricians, tradespeople, car mechanics, they have pretty good livings. And I only say that not to encourage people to go into doing something that, we need the services the rest of us need. If mechanics fulfill you, if electrician work fulfills you, go for it. Don't buy the line of BS that the only way you're going to have a comfortable life is to go into student debt, getting a bachelor's degree, because there are a lot of trades that I would imagine are very fulfilling: craftsmen, workmen, carpenters, construction, all the stuff I just said a moment ago. And that kind of stuff should also be offered and taught in Chicago public schools. I remember when I went to New Trier, North Side privileged white kid, they had shop classes. They had a mechanics class. They had an auto class. We had the luxury in high school of discovering trades if we wanted to. I don't see that throughout the city of Chicago. I know there's some specialized schools for it, but why not integrate that at a high school level also to help some of these kids find jobs that are going to be easier for them to land than, oh, you just out of high school? Great. You got money for college? Spend 4 years there, then go into crushing student debt? I don't think so.
I was looking at the early chats here, and Lou had a post. Where was it?
About the pizza bet?
But there it is. Okay, I got it.
Aviance shares. Here's a trade. This is a trade that I really don't want to see kids going into. Drone pilots. You're talking for the military. Yeah, but you know what, Aviance? And welcome to the show. It's good to see you, dear. The military really wants to recruit the kids that can't afford to go to college.
Yeah,
to be cannon fodder and basically train to man those drones to kill other people of color in other countries.
Well, and it's also possible that you could be a drone pilot for a delivery company. You wouldn't necessarily have to work for the military being a drone pilot.
Well, yeah, I think that
I'm trying to see the positive side of learning how to pilot a drone.
Yeah. Well, when we see that camera drones are great. you know, in the media industry. I guess I hadn't thought about widespread drone delivery yet with services like Amazon or other services. So yeah, you got a very good point there, Ed. Thank you for balancing my pessimism, as you often do.
I mean, I'll look for the bright side on things if I can. I mean, it's, you know, it's worth thinking about, you know, what are the other possibilities for the amazing levels of technology that potentially terrifying us, but maybe we can use them in a better way.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So thank you. I hadn't seen that side of it.
Could I take a moment just to point out, Jerry, that somebody had predicted who the people in the runoff were going to be on this show? And
I was wrong, and I own it. And I'm glad I was wrong.
And that someone is not this guy, but this guy.
Me. I was wrong.
Yeah, but I was right, is what I'm saying. I
know you were. Yeah,
I was like, holy crap, I got something right. Anyway, so I just
Big Mr. Firebird shares. Let's see here. Wait for it to load. Palos has the best interest. Palos has the best interest of Chicago at heart. Those interests is having a high APR. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, well, mission accomplished, Paul. Somebody lend me $100,000. No, okay.
Yeah, this endorsement by Jesse White is very, very troubling. Now, let's go into our next story with what are we talking about with the concern about privatization? And Paul Vallis is loaning himself $100,000 to basically stack the deck in a way that he can take in all these donations and basically have a larger war chest from all of the corporate rich companies that are going to benefit from a Palos administration. This came from Gregory Pratt at the Tribune yesterday. Campaign contribution limits are off in the race for Chicago mayor. Now, what does that mean? Paul Vallis lent $100,100 to his mayoral campaign fund Thursday, a move that lifts restrictions on how much money both he and opponent Brandon Johnson can receive from campaign contributors. This means Brandon's going to have to match or outspend Palos Paul in the amount of money that they're going to need for media blitz. Because you know what? It's not even the commercials that are expensive to produce. It's the airtime. We saw Rahm Emanuel 24/7 when he ran last time. And that's why he won. Because he was able to outspend everybody. And Rahm Emanuel's going to make a save. I'm seeing him everywhere. He must be the guy to vote for. Sadly, the ignorant members of the electorate that don't watch shows like ours or read Block Club Chicago or do their research on somebody like Palos Paul, because I mentioned in some previous show, I had dinner with a friend of mine I respect greatly. He's a smart guy. And I asked him he asked me who I liked in the mayor's race, and I mentioned Green, and he said he liked Paul Vallis. And I said, you know me, I'm just like, zip the lip.
Why?
Don't engage. That's what I asked him. I didn't want to get upset about it, but I said, I'm curious, what is it about Vallis that appeals to you? Well, I've read some of his editorials and some of his ideas and articles, and I think that, based on what I've read from his articles, I like his policies. And I'm like, well, have you read articles from the other candidates? No. Were you aware of the damage he's done in other cities with privatization, with New Orleans, and how he ignored the sexual abuse scandal while he was CEO of Chicago Public Schools, which I think speaks to his character? No, I didn't know about that. I'm like, that's the problem, Ed. People are not tuned in regularly to getting the facts that are not plastered everywhere, to realize that there's a problem with this guy. He loaned himself $100,000 so he could take more money from more people to outspend Brandon so he could serve the interests that are funding his campaign. Plain and simple. That's why he's renting a house in Bridgeport, an apartment in Bridgeport.
It's like what I said. Yeah, it's like what I said earlier. He hit that cap strategically so he could take all this money to run a blitz of ads bashing his opponent because he can't win on the merits.
And he's going to use the
buzzword policy.
He's going to use that buzzword that Johnson is an extremist, and we know what that means.
Say he's an extremist. He's going to pull out the defund rhetoric, or if he doesn't, one of his super PACs will, for sure.
And he's going to use the S word the dreaded socialism word, like that's a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
Not at all.
Yeah, because I mean, don't you like Social Security? Don't you
Don't
think
you like-
it should be better?
Don't you like having the police and the fire department drop everything to come respond to you? That's socialism. That's a social. We have a democratic socialist society here. They only pretend that it's not, is what it is.
Yeah.
But you know what's interesting too, Ed? What a lot of people who decry socialism don't realize, we're the most socialist country in the nation. Those benefiting the most from socialism are the corporations. They're the ones getting all the handouts, not the rest of us who are shouldering the tax burden.
You said we're the most socialist country in the nation.
I'm sorry, in the world. Thank you.
Which is technically true.
Yeah. Well, I just lost the Tribune article. Link just broke on the window I'm reading here. Hang on a second. And my memory's up, even though I don't have all these. Let me close some windows here. Hang on a second.
I've got it up.
I know, but I've got to. Okay, I've got to. That's what she said.
Whee!
Woo! I'm trying to read it off of my alternate screen, not just the one I've got.
Those nights.
Hang on a second. Let me see if I can drag it over here. I'm going to turn mine off. Let's bring yours up. Put yours up before I remove mine with the photo. There we go. Okay. Oh. Stand by, everybody. Okay, so I can read from the article. All right, so when we're talking about how he loaned himself $100,100, the move busting the contributions cap by the former Chicago public school CEO clears the way for business interests and wealthy donors to write him checks. It also opens the door for Johnson, a Cook County commissioner, to benefit from significant union support, most notably the Chicago Teachers Union. Still, it might be unlikely Johnson will raise as much campaign cash as Vallis, who has raised more than $5 million since entering the mayoral race last summer. And there he is. That's with Jesse White, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jesse White.
Thick as thieves. State law limits the. Oh, by the way, extra note to Jay Mall. You can guarantee that Willie Wilson and his voters are going to go support Palos Paul. So I
at
really
least half of them.
I don't think at least half. I think all of them.
You think all?
Yeah. I do, because they listen to Willie. They listen to what Willie Wilson tells them to do. They voted for him because he was helping them out. And look, Willie Wilson is beloved in his community because of the outreach that he does, and I've given him credit for that in the past. But I've spoken with other educated people that I've brought up. He's basically buying votes, and they don't see it that way, and that's why they support him. And I'm like, it's like what we talk about with Palos Paul and renting the apartment in Bridgeport. They're engaging in cheap stunts. In Vallis's case, to get on the ballot. In Wilson's case, yeah, he's helping the community, but it's to get people to vote for him. That's what it's about. Although he did announce on Twitter that they're going to be doing another gas and grocery giveaway, I think. To which I put on Twitter, I think somebody's planning for a write-in campaign, but probably not. And the fact he's going to be giving stuff out post-election. But back to the Tribune article. State law limits the amount of money donors can give to candidates for public office, with some exceptions, including races where at least one candidate self-funding or giving their campaign more than $100,000. So Vallis's loan Thursday was designed specifically to lift those restrictions. Contributions to both Vallis and Johnson drew scrutiny in the first round of the mayoral race, where the two were the biggest vote getters in a field of 9 candidates, including Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Vallis and Johnson are now facing off in the runoff April 4th. Vallis reported receiving large sums of money from conservative contributors and prominent Republicans. What have we said before, Ed?
Vallis is a Republican.
Yeah. He knows he can't win as a Republican in Chicago, so he runs as a Democrat. And by the way, Darren Bailey was all over social media congratulating Vallis. Two peas.
Now, there is one thing I would like to say about this, though. I mean, just to say, he's a Republican. I mean, look, there are some people in the city who identify with the Republican Party or identify as conservatives and consider themselves leaning toward Republicans, and that's fine. If you're conservative and everything, you still want the city to do well. I don't think we need to just demonize anybody just because they're a Republican, particularly. But it says a lot when Vallis runs as a quote unquote Democrat and then gets all this support from people on the other side of potentially on the other side of the duopoly.
Let me clarify. I am not villainizing Republicans. There are good Republicans. The point we know he's a Republican with all those contributors speaks to the fact that he's deceitful. He knows he's a Republican. He knows the interest that he's serving.
Yeah.
He knows the extreme rich conservative interest that he's serving. Although we know also there's not a huge difference between Democrats and Republicans these days. So I'm not, I'm not carrying water for the Democrats because they all take money from the same overlords, and it's a big club that we're not in. But
yeah, and what this is
a deceitful tactic, though. Yeah. This speaks to the deceit of, oh, I'm a Chicago and I live in Bridgeport, even though I'm taking the Homestead exemption in Palos Heights. Oh, I've done great things in New Orleans, even though there are like 4 public schools left, and they're only serving, special needs kids at a great loss.
Yeah, what is important, I think, to notice here is that because Chicago has been known for years as being basically a Democratic machine hub, it's when you have people on the other side of that in the quote unquote Republican machine supporting a different candidate, it kind of shows you that just the vindictiveness of the two parties trying their hardest to wrestle control of the city back, and they don't care if they if they're going to put support behind a guy who identifies as the other. And in this case, Vallis doesn't care because they're giving him money. And I would just say, as far as Brandon Johnson goes, I mean, now that he pretty much has to match him or try to match him in fundraising, it makes sense for him to court people from the Democratic end of that machine, which is why he makes appearances on MSNBC. So he's, he gets on Reverend Al's show. All the people in Chicago who are, the older, maybe boomers, possibly silent generation, maybe greatest generation, if any of them are still alive. The ones that are watching that channel are seeing Brandon Johnson on there. I think Vallis went on there as well, but I haven't watched that video yet to see what he had to say. So it'll be interesting to see if he's actually pandering when he goes on that interview.
Let me bring up an example. When Lightfoot ran, progressive policies, she was going to be looking forward. She was going to institute reform with the police department, reform in helping the neighborhoods. She didn't do it. That's what she said she was going to do, and she basically continued Rahm Emanuel's policies.
Yeah,
that's what Palos Paul is going to do. He's the third in line of whether you want to say he's a Republican or a neoliberal Democrat. Here's your choice, Chicago. If you want more of what Rahm and Lori ushered in with privatization, serving big interests, serving big business. I'm not against big business. We need business here in the city of Chicago, right? But they're always the ones that get all the benefits at the what's the word? I'm having a brain fart here. At the not the risk, at the loss, at the sacrifice of these neighborhoods that have been abandoned. And from my perspective, I don't think Brandon's going to turn his back on business. Johnson's, but he's going to balance it more equally in a way that things will be more equitable and there will be more focus on the vulnerable, those that don't have a voice, where money that previous mayors said we don't have actually goes, instead of tax breaks and redeveloping the tourist district and, giving all these opportunities to a fucking casino that's also going to prey upon so many other issues. Gambling addiction, bring more crime in, bring in worse elements than we already have. That's going to be Lightfoot's legacy is going to be this casino. Mark my words. In the end, when all that goes south, that's what I hope that she's remembered for, the fact that she forced that down our throats. Because I don't know that it's going to be the boon that she thinks it was financial. I think it's going to bring more problems in. But I've been wrong before. Going back to the article, when we were talking about Republicans, Vallis's largest contributor was golf course developer Michael Kaiser, who's given him $700,000. Kaiser previously contributed $11,200 to former President Donald Trump, a Republican. Vallis has taken money from John Canning, a Chicago private equity executive who has given to many politicians locally, but also national Republicans, and Noel Moore, who's given Trump and Texas Republican U.S. Senator Ted Cruz. Vallis also took $25,000 from Ron Gidwitz, Trump's 2016 Illinois finance chairman, who was a finance co-chair of the National Republican Senatorial Committee and ran as a Republican for governor in 2006. Now, historically, are Republicans focused on the bread and butter issues of the working class nationally, locally? No. I don't think they are. Would you agree with that or disagree, Ed?
I mean, I would say most party loyalist ones are not.
Okay.
They don't. They're more about pick yourself up by your bootstraps, give all kinds of breaks and remove restrictions to big and small business. They want everybody. They want to unshackle capitalism, regardless of the fact that even people who consider themselves capitalists, most of them are just merchants and not actual capitalists.
And look at what capitalism has done for the United States of America, for the rest of us. Capitalism serves Wall Street and the big corporate entities very, very well. The rest of us, not so much. So all of you who scream about how much you love capitalism while you're working your slave, jobs, thinking that, well, I have to support Republican conservative values because I'm going to be a millionaire someday and I want those tax breaks. It ain't going to happen. Stop viewing yourself as a temporarily inconvenienced millionaire that wants all the benefits of the obscenely rich get. Hunker down and get together with the rest of the people around you so we can. This is a class war right now, and I think that Johnson and Vallis couldn't more clearly define that class war. Working class teachers in a union that's got to fight to keep its workers on some solid ground versus a guy who doesn't live in Chicago, who's basically taken advantage of every loophole to run while he's taking a homestead exemption in the suburb that he lives. And now he's taking these huge donations from all these businesses that expect something back if he wins. How much fucking clearer could it be? Do you want a mayor that's going to be maybe balance things more for the working class, maybe not business? And that's the reason all these businesses are supporting Vallis, Ed. They know that we can't have Johnson because we're not going to get all these handouts. We're not going to get all these opportunities because he's going to start focusing on, what's missing for the common people in the city of Chicago. That's the class war element to this.
Yep.
The article goes on to say, asked why Republicans donated to his campaign, Vallis previously said, because the city is in trouble and crime is out of control. Quote, I think I'm getting the support from the business community because the business community feels that I'm the one best equipped to deal with those issues. Yeah. Privatize and just focus on business in Chicago, not the fucking people who live here that are struggling with the insane property taxes and the loss of mental health clinics that feeds the mental health crisis and basically creates some of the crime, if not a lot of the crime, that you then decide to hyperfund the police department with that doesn't solve anything. He also pointed out some of his donors, such as Canning, have also given to Democrats, including Lightfoot. Major donor to Republican causes Craig Dukosios, for instance, has given $10,000 to Vallis and was a major supporter of Richard Irvin for governor. Lightfoot took $100,000 from Dukosios in 2019. Johnson, who in addition to being a Cook County commissioner is an organizer for CTU, received nearly $1 million from the teachers union in his bid to make the runoff. The powerful teachers union even borrowed dues money against future contributions to its political fund to make sure Johnson had the resources he needed for TV commercials and get out the vote efforts. They're borrowing money for this guy to get his message out to represent working class here in Chicago. Palos Paul loans himself $100,000. Boom. Millions. Millions.
Speaking of that, you know who also gave him $100,000?
Who?
Orland Park's Gerald Beeson, chief operating officer of Ken Griffin's Citadel.
They left town. Why do they need to have their tentacles here anymore? They ran to Florida to get tax breaks. Yeah. They ran to Florida after Ken Griffin, that piece of shit. We're leaving because crime's high in Chicago. No, you're not. You're going to Florida because, number one, you're not going to pay as much in taxes that you should since you're a fucking billionaire. And two, Ron DeSantis, who's governor there, might run for president. And Mr. Griffin, you want to be Secretary of the Treasury. So you're really the fox guard in the hen house, beyond which you're manipulating the market with the dark pools.
And three, he just bought a house there. And I think according to Florida law, even if they indict his ass for federal crimes, he can still keep his house.
Sadly, yet I don't see any indictments on the horizon with Ken Griffin.
No, seriously, it's going to take a huge cleanup of the SEC and FINRA and all of those hedge weasel companies that are dealing with the dark pool trading on Wall Street right now.
And, you got Gary Gensler there sucking Griffin off at every turn. Yeah. Here's the funny thing about SEC. What is he? SEC. He's the commissioner. How do we identify Gary Gensler?
Gary Gensler, head weasel.
He's a cuck. Do you know how many people tweet to him about the dark pool and the market abuse every goddamn day? So either he's got a staff that's tweeting for him. I doubt it. I think
he's just ignoring.
He's ignoring it. He is complicit, and as much of it's complicit. He's a
tool.
Not a tool. What are they when you're aiding and abetting? He's not a henchman. He's a
accomplice.
He's an accomplice. He's an accomplice to the crimes that are being committed by Wall Street. So is the entire SEC.
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just us complaining because our AMC stock is getting messed with. It's not just that. It's like the entire stock market. If you've got a 401k retirement account, they're messing with your money too.
Yep. Now, lest we forget the fact that, who else serves Palos Paul? Well, the big media interests over at the Chicago Tribune that endorsed him. Okay. Look at this editorial today. I just laugh at this as if they had the power of the old Democratic machine. The fact that the Tribune editorial board even suggests this is fucking hilarious and laughable, that they would make this kind of comparison.
But
by the Tribune editorial board. Go ahead.
But you see, Jerry, this is one of the narratives they're trying to paint now.
Yep.
And even Jay Mall is falling for it with that comment he made on Twitter. Because if he's going to go and pretend that the CTU has as much power as the old Chicago machine, then he's just falling into the same trap there. He needs to rise above that.
And he's smarter than that. I don't even know if he saw this. I don't know if he saw this article, but it does relate to his reference to not wanting CTU to have that much power. I don't think CTU has enough power, with all due respect, Mr. Green. So, as the editorial board opines, in the 1919 mayoral campaign in Chicago, a young Richard J. Daley signed up as a precinct captain in Chicago's 11th Ward, and he hitched his wagon to the Cook County Democratic Organization, otherwise known as the Chicago Machine. The operation was hierarchical, as rigidly hierarchical as the Catholic Church. Adam Cohen and Elizabeth Taylor write in their definitive daily biography, American Pharaoh. And membership came with a moral code involving utter fealty to those above you in the hierarchy, a willingness to reward or repay those faithful to you, an obligation never to question or undermine the party as a whole, and to keep your nose out of intramural fights that were none of your business. So right on its face, I'm sensing the Tribune is going to start to suggest that CTU is like that. I'm as cynical as the rest of them. I know that unions, unfortunately, can be corrupt. There are bad actors in unions, but no, CTU is not going to operate under this definition of what the Catholic Church and the previous. No,
they have different goals. You know, I mean, the Chicago machine, it was all about power and money. You know, I don't think the Chicago Teachers Union is going to be all about, you know, that so much as they just want to make sure that the schools have the proper support that they need.
Right.
So, you know, and that the teachers aren't having to take second and third jobs to make ends meet. That, I mean, those are reasonable concerns.
I need to respond to our friend Aviance in the chat. No one's going to give me money to run for mayor, Aviance. I'm struggling to raise $1 million to finance my next feature film. No one's going to give me money. Plus, they don't like my big mouth. They don't like the fact I'm based or I tell it like it is. So, but thank you if you're being supportive. I'm not sure if you're being supportive or sarcastic. Aviance also asks, what did Jamal say? Well, what Jamal said, Aviance, on his Twitter was that he doesn't feel, as much as he doesn't feel that the business interest that Vallis supports should have all the power, he kind of alluded to the fact that he doesn't think CTU should have a lot of the same amount of power. And I don't think CTU, I mean, it's my opinion, I don't think CTU is looking for the same kind of power as business and the Democratic machine here in Chicago. I think they're just looking for more equity for their teachers and for the students across the city of Chicago. Thank you. Appreciate that. Can you imagine me as mayor? I don't think so.
Mayor of Chicago Corner, maybe.
Yeah, I'm the mayor. That's right. I am the mayor of Chicago Corner.
Yeah. So while we aren't actually taking campaign donations for Jerry's campaign to run for mayor of Chicago Corner, we would be super happy if you donated to us at patreon.com/Chicago Corner.
Oops, sorry.
And
yes.
We thank all of our Patreon supporters.
That's right. Who will mention one more time? Kathy Powers, Dominic Palella, Joey Locasio, Shane Coughlin, and Dr. Howard Ehrman. So Jim Cree shares in the chat, children and old folks are just waiting for the rest to return home and bring good times. Yeah. So back to the Tribune editorial. In return, the machine delivered an unbeatable ground game at election time, an army of precinct captains who were expected to have personal relationships with every Chicago voter in their territory. The machine knew that a sense of moral obligation to a friend and neighbor was a far more reliable way to get someone to the polls and have them vote for the right candidate than yard signs or advertising thrown out to the winds of chance. Over time, Daley learned how to use the machine to undergird his own rise to decades of power. These days, of course, the word machine summons up coercion and corruption. Yeah, because that's what it was. That's what it is. Still is. We're still seeing it downstate with Madigan's reign, or outgoing, corrupt, and disgraced Alderman Burke. Now, there can be no doubt that some of those personal relationships with precinct captains back in the days involved turkeys or bottles of whiskey. That's all? What about the almighty dollar? A harbinger of the more modern practice of sending some clients the way of a law firm specializing in property taxes and belonging to an Illinois politician. Did I just mention Burger King? On the other hand, you could argue that the machine also got things organized, created helpful coalitions and levels of engagement among citizens who could not gain power on their own and became at its best a house for all people, as Mayor Anton Cermak famously declared. Yeah, with basically someone operating under the title of mayor as a monarch. Lori Lightfoot, who was cast out of office Tuesday night, was no machine politician. In fact, her future biographer likely will declare her to be, or have been, about as far from a machine politician as it is possible to travel. But when it came to Brandon Johnson, one of the candidates who won a spot in the runoff with Paul Vallis to succeed her, that old school adjective reappeared Tuesday night. Except the boss was not the Cook County Democratic Party, but the Chicago Teachers Union. Alderman Brian Hopkins of the 2nd marveled at Johnson's ground support on polling day, saying there had been at least 3 CTU members or staffers in precincts he had visited Tuesday in neighborhoods such as Old Town, Streeterville, Lincoln Park, Wicker Park, and the Gold Coast. But that's what they all do. They've got people outside every polling place, far enough out to follow the rules to pass out literature
and make sure people know about their candidate. Fran Spielman reported early Wednesday in the Sun-Times. Voters in those areas abandoned Lightfoot, who had warred with the CTU in large numbers, and chose the more progressive Johnson instead. By the way, in this case, progressive is not a maligned or bad word. He is forward-thinking. He is looking to serve the struggling across the city, not just business. That's the equity I believe he will bring. That's the equity I thought Jamal would bring, if we're going to be fair about it. And that's why I hope that they align. They're everywhere, Hopkins told Spielman, referencing the CTU workers. It's a saturation ground game, even in precincts where Johnson was not expected to do well. If they have that many people to spare, that's incredible. It's something to see. This is the new machine. No, it's not. It's organizing. It's like every campaign, every candidate that's got support behind them, it's organizing. It's not a new machine, which we take to have sinister overtones.
Oh, the editorial board wrote this. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. This is the editorial.
Okay.
The ones who endorsed Vallis.
Yeah. This is a clear hit piece, right?
This is propaganda.
Yeah.
This is fear mongering and propaganda. This is FUD. Fear, uncertainty. They're sowing fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Mm-hmm.
Hopkins, who is supporting Vallis, has a partisan view and agenda, but the evidence Tuesday night, when a lesser-known candidate with largely socialist position.
Dun, dun, dun. Trumpets of doom.
Vanquished a sitting center-left mayor with a growing. She's not center-left. She was center-right. She pretended she was center-left. She wasn't. With a growing national profile, she was when it came to identity politics. That's about the only center-left issue she pandered to. With a growing national profile and sympathetic media outlets, certainly suggested he had a point. Much media attention had been paid to the vast amounts of money that the CTU had injected into the mayoral campaign, but the ground game probably proved to be the more significant mover of the numbers and perhaps a harbinger of what is to come in the April runoff. An argument could be made that the politically pejorative machine, quote unquote, can be applied to any coalition one does not support. You could call the business community a machine. I wouldn't call the business community a machine at all. I would call it our corporate overlords is what I'd call them. Or to use it to describe the fraternal order of police or firefighters and first responders, or you could apply the term to racially identifiable groups. No, you cannot apply the word machine to racially identifiable groups. And anyone who was out there ringing doorbells for their candidate was not only exhibiting their constitutional right, but also showing admirable commitment to the political process. But while we congratulate Johnson and Vallis on making it to the runoff, we do remind them of the long history of fealty to sponsoring organizations. Really? And what is your thought on all the dark money in Palos Paul's campaign, Chicago Tribune editorial board?
Crickets.
Leading to corruption and moral compromise. Really? What do you think of the fact that Palos Paul took advantage of the system and the loopholes to rent an apartment in Chicago last year? Chicago Tribune editorial board. Where were you? I think the editorial board actually came out again, or someone wrote an article at the Tribune, and they had held him accountable, or they my thesaurus in my head is breaking down tonight. They had condemned Vallis for not following through on the investigations at CPS for sexual abuse allegations when he was CEO. That got swept under the rug this time. That was a big issue last election when everybody looked at him as a joke. But now he's the big daddy white business candidate, and nobody's talking about that shady stuff. The old machine was often compared to the Politburo, and not without reason. We note the importance of transparency, and we assert that asking about a candidate's independence from a larger agenda? What the fuck? Are you serious? You're posing that question towards Johnson and not all of the financial interests and donors from these PACs that don't want to identify themselves from out of town Chicago Tribune editorial board?
You know what I think about the Chicago Tribune editorial board, Jerry?
Hanky. What does that mean, Vince? Hinky. Oh, strange. Weird. Well, don't you say strange or weird? I mean, hinky, that has no meaning. We say hinky. I don't want you guys using words when I mean got no meaning.
This is my response to the Chicago Tribune editorial board's editorial.
This is such a crock of shit.
Yeah. Hinky shit.
Yeah, we note the importance of transparency, and we assert that asking about a candidate's independence from a larger agenda is not only a fair question, but also one that demands an honest answer, especially if we are talking independence from an entity that is doing a very fine job of helping them get elected. Quote, how long a string do you actually have to compromise with those who disagree with you might turn out to be the most important question in the upcoming March Madness.
What? They're really reaching really hard.
They are. They're reaching, and they're giving Vallis the reach around too with that editorial. Wow.
So, yeah.
So we found it. I found this funny meme on Twitter. Lest there is any doubt in regards to what we're talking about here, regarding the interests supporting Vallis. Yeah, I know. It's meet the evil empire behind Paul Vallis. Now, this comes from Chicago teacher memes. Awake Illinois, the GOP, Illinois Policy Institute, Chicago Tribune, MAGA, Turning Point USA. Yep. Pretty much. Oh, sorry. I was trying to remove mine. Yep. All right. Let me go into our show notes and get our next story up here. Where are we?
Oh, there's a page 2. Okay.
Oh, yeah. This is a long show tonight. I think we're probably going to go till about 4 or 5 in the morning, Ed. Kidding.
It's not even 9 o'clock yet. This is one of our short shows.
And you know what? I actually did think we were going to go a bit long because there was a lot to talk about here, but we're pretty much we're drifting through it pretty fast.
It's taking a while to load the WGN page here.
Yeah.
What's that about?
Come on here. Oh yeah, yeah. Speaking of Law and Order and the police, Chicago police, first we had Brown step down because he saw the writing on the wall, but because he knew that Vallis is, if there's one good thing Vallis could do, it's get rid of Brown. But I'm sure Johnson would have done the same thing. But, the police who supported Law and Order Palos Paul reelected their union president, John Clouton-Zara, on Friday. This is reported today, Friday. Members of Chicago's police union are casting their votes Friday for the person they want to serve as president for the next 3 years. They are casting their votes, as we like to speculate, for the candidate that reflects their values. So naturally, they decide to cast their votes for Clouton-Zara, who's had a history of abuse in his jacket, reprimands in his jacket as a former police officer. With 57% to 47% of the vote, the union voted to elect John Clouton-Zara. Cotton-Zara. It came as the city prepares for a shakeup in City Hall, including Chicago Police Department superintendent stepping down. The Chicago Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 7 represents about 17,000 men and women serving in only 17,000 Chicago police officers? Wow, I would have thought
good start.
I would have thought, but still, what's our population? I guess is what I'm getting to.
We looked that up once.
Yeah. Well, many have already sent in their ballots by mail for the Fraternal Order of Police election. Those who did not had until noon Friday to vote in person. And by the way, I think it was it Green or Johnson who had proposed change to the schedule so that the police have a little bit more mental health days for themselves and more mental health support on the job, which is they don't have. We reported in a previous story, I think it came from Block Club Chicago or the Tribune, how few mental health therapists or personnel there were to serve the entire Chicago police force, rank and file. Not enough. So don't tell us we're anti-cop here, because we do see that they do need more support in that way, along with a lot of reform. with their candidates. that they decide.
Population of Chicago 2,761,625.
And 17,000 men and women protecting us.
You know, if we have the proper support services and communities and everything, that would be plenty.
Yeah. Yeah. One would hope. All right, let me get back to the article here. Current Fraternal Order of Police President John Catanzara Jr., a former Chicago police officer, has held the seat of president since 2020. He's being challenged by a 24-year veteran of CPT, Detective Bob Bartlett. When Catanzara was elected in 2020, he said it was a priority to get the contract done securing a raise for officers during his first term. I think there is a video there. There's one popping up on my end, even though I don't have it open.
Oh, you want me to play the?
If you could open that, you know what? Let me take your screen off, and I'm just going to read and pop that back on if the video loads properly.
I've got it.
You got it? Okay, go ahead and add it.
Yeah.
I'll pause.
Can you pull it up?
Yeah.
Can you put it up on
her?
Okay.
17,000 men and women serving in Chicago, represented by the FOP Lodge 7, sent in their ballots by mail. Those who didn't were able to come here today and cast their votes in person until noon.
Come to vote. Don't worry, this line is moving.
As members of the Fraternal Order of Police, Chicago
He's
Lodge
standing
7
right
cast their ballots in
outside.
the election. They had to decide whether they'd like to see a new FOP president.
They don't care about electioneering in the FOP, apparently.
Of course not. They're above the law, Ed. Doesn't that reflect everything the reform that's needed? Because they're not above the law. It's a privilege to serve and protect and not look at the people that you're supposed to serve and protect as enemies, which this guy, Catanzara, clearly feeds into.
President represent them for the next 3 years.
We have tried to bend over backwards 24-hour service to our members and doing everything we can to improve their lives and their working conditions.
Current FOP president and former Chicago police officer John Catanzara Jr. running against Detective Bob Bartlett, a 24-year veteran of Chicago police.
I think they're ready for a change.
While Bartlett has stayed mostly out of the spotlight, Catanzara, who faced dozens of misconduct allegations throughout.
Okay, I just want to say I think he's got a nice tie.
It's the only good thing you can say about him.
Yeah.
His career has faced criticism for hurting relationships with city leaders during his time as president, including Mayor Lori Lightfoot.
I mean, the reality is we've never been not willing to work with the mayor. We're just not going to roll over and play dead for him.
Pause it for a second.
Really?
I got to say something. You know what? When you're dressed for success, the 5 o'clock shadow doesn't work. He just looks unkempt when he doesn't shave. Not that I'm like, we should focus on the superficial appearances, but he always looks like he just crawled out of bed and didn't shave. And it's like, you know what, if you're going to represent your constituents and put on a suit, I shave every Tuesday and Friday to look nice for our viewers. I mean, just take some time to groom yourself.
Yeah, I have fuzzy tendencies on my face, so I'm like once a week. Otherwise, I get a nasty rash. So,
and you have a well-kept beard, and it's you don't have all the 5 o'clock shadow around that. It's like you take care of yourself.
Well, I mean, it's just that because the goatee is here, that it's understated of the stubble that I have on the side, so it's less noticeable. But for Catanzara, yeah, you're right. I mean, he's suit and tie. Dude could have taken a moment to shave, at least on his own election day.
Yeah.
And that's what she expected from day one.
Catanzara, who previously shared he would run for mayor in 2023, also facing backlash for comments made on several occasions, including one to the Chicago Sun-Times, comparing the city's employee vaccine mandate to Nazi Germany. In a video posted to YouTube, he later tried to walk back the comments, saying they weren't supposed to be on the record, and apologized to the, quote, people who were offended, specifically the Jewish community.
In no way was I trying to tie forced vaccinations to the atrocities of the Holocaust, which is why I never used the word Holocaust.
Still, Catanzara stands by his work he's done during his time as FOP president and says he's fought for officers, including securing a new contract with a raise.
If we fall short, I'm going to walk away with my head held high. I know I did everything we possibly could.
For Bartlett, he tells WGN he wants to rebuild relationships with city and state leaders and fight for better mental health resources for officers.
They see the worst things every day, and they need that time off to decompress, to make sense of it, and to basically reboot themselves and go back out there and do their job.
While both candidates...
Yeah, it's a shame they didn't vote for this guy.
Yeah.
It sounded like he would put them back on the right footing here.
He's not
I know we
authoritarian that Catanzaro is.
And I know we demonize Catanzaro a lot on this show. And I mean, some of the points that he's made over time seemed to a lot of us to be unreasonable in the times of the lockdown. But then now that a lot of us have learned more information about a lot of that stuff, I don't dislike every single position that he took from that time anymore. I'm not saying I'm siding with him. I'm saying I kind of understand where he was coming from as far as having an issue with Lightfoot basically being a mini tyrant in this city.
You fascist, you anti-vax fascist.
Yeah, well, I'm saying is that Lightfoot was, so she was the fascist in this story. But it's not. Anyway, let's get back.
Candidates may not agree on everything. Both feel the results of this election and the April 4th runoff will set the tone for the future of the city and the officers the FOP represents.
Sadly,
it's been pretty clear that politics is the way out of this nightmare. This profession and this department specifically has been under attack for 3 years plus.
We're looking for a better tomorrow, hopefully, that with a better mayor and a police department that can actually go out there and fight crime.
Also,
all right, whatever. You're cops. You're going to have that perspective.
Yeah.
On the FOP election ballot, other positions including trustee, treasurer, and sergeant at arms. Of course, both candidates here tell us they believe they're the right fit to represent the FOP as president for the next 3 years. Reporting in the West Loop, Courtney Spinelli, WGN News.
Thanks, Courtney.
Well, that pretty much covers that article. That update on Catanzaro and his election. Okay, going into other news. We're now going into the update section of the show regarding stories that we've previously reported on, and I'd be remiss.
Okay.
I'd be remiss. We moved on from all the election fallout. I mean, I think that we've pretty much covered it all and gotten some good comments in the chat now. But before I go into the next story, let's refresh the palate with this.
I'm not suicidal. That's what I was about to say. Okay. I'm not suicidal. Okay. I am not suicidal. I am innocent, and I am not suicidal.
Yeah, it's true.
Speaking of clowns, that award-winning French thespian Juicy Smollet.
He is also not Jeffrey Epstein.
Who alluded that? Oh, I got it. Okay, the
Just
suicide.
saying.
Right. Okay. And you've got this one loaded on that end, I think.
I do.
Cool. All right. So, unfortunately, there are no pictures with the article. That's why I wanted to show we don't need to have the article up. We can just read from the Tribune article since there's no visual there. But year after sentencing, actor Juicy Smollet appeals, claiming his double jeopardy rights were violated. Trial judge biased. Can't this guy just own up to the fact that he tried to start a race war here by pretending that he was attacked by MAGA retards downtown that just happened to carry a bottle of bleach and a noose around with them in River North, who we were supposed to assume we're familiar with his work on Empire, when clearly anybody who's MAGA is not going to be watching Empire to recognize him coming out of a subway to decide to commit a racial crime against him. Anyway, he's a clown. But what he did illustrate though, Ed? He illustrated how fast the police can investigate and find something out when it comes to matters of showing that he was the one who was acting as a race hustler. Right? They triangulated. They looked at all those tapes. I'm glad that the police were able to show he was a fraud, But it just shows where there's a will, there's a way with the police department as far as what they're willing to make sure that, they cover really quickly and get to the heart of.
Okay.
Nearly
yeah,
a year.
Well, I think he's before we get into the article, I think he's resistant because he was probably promised a lot of support when he first did this stunt by the people in Congress that very likely put him up to it.
Yep.
Because some people don't recall that they were trying to push through an anti-lynching bill through Congress at the time this was happening. And so I think somebody put him up to it. I can't prove it. And I have suspicions on maybe some of those Democratic people who might have been responsible. One of them might be a vice presidential candidate who got 0 delegates, but I can't prove that.
The ones who are related to him. And who better than this narcissistic idiot to lean on to think that he's going to look, in the larger scheme of things, an anti-lynching bill is a good thing. Deciding to stoop to manufacturing a crime that could have potentially sparked a larger crisis here in Chicago was not the way to do it. And that's what he did. He thought of himself and anybody who may have put him up to it. And, in their minds, they're thinking of the greater good as that anti-lynching bill would go through. No, this isn't the way to do it. There are other ways to prove the merit of what that bill was supposed to be about, not staging. Yeah, 2 guys in MAGA hats are walking around the city with bleach and a noose, and they knew who he was from his work on Empire to decide to target him. I mean, it's just, I can imagine being a cop taking his statement when they went to go visit him, and he wouldn't take the noose off when he was in his apartment. I mean, what greater example of look, actors can be very, very talented, but they can be very self-involved and very stupid. And think that they know better, think that they're smarter than everyone else. They're not. Nearly a year after being sentenced to 5 months in jail, only to be released on bond days later, actor Jussie Smollett has filed his long-awaited appeal claiming his indictment by a special prosecutor was invalid due to double jeopardy concerns and that the trial judge was biased against him. The 102-page brief filed Wednesday with the Illinois Appellate Court covered mostly familiar ground in the well-worn case against Smollet, the one-time Empire star who was convicted by a jury in December of 2021 of paying 2 acquaintances to fake a racist, homophobic attack on him to get exposure and boost his career. We forgot about that element. He was leaving the show, and he thought it would be a boost to his career. So it was self-serving in a way also.
Yeah, it's just not very bright.
Cook County Judge James Lynn sentenced Smollet in March of 2022 to 150 days in jail in a hearing during which Smollet once again proclaimed his innocence, dramatically telling the judge, oh shit, here we go.
I am not suicidal. That's what I was about to say. Okay. I am not suicidal. Okay. I am not suicidal. I am innocent. And I'm not suicidal.
It's like he felt that because whatever stunt he didn't go off as planned, that he thinks that somebody is going to come after him.
Yeah.
And I think he seriously thinks that.
Well, that speaks to his narcissism and his detachment from reality, Ed, that a lot of look, we can celebrate acting is not easy. I took an acting class in high school. I wanted to be an actor. Actually, I wanted to be Harrison Ford or Mel Gibson and basically live the fantasy life that we see on screen, getting involved in all kinds of fun imaginary adventures, right? But it's I can't act my way out of a paper bag. And it's different from hosting and offering opinions, right? I'm comfortable presenting, but when you have to get in the mind of a character, it's tough. So I give them a lot of credit. But the fact that they can be chameleons and live so many lives in their heads, you either have to be very well balanced, you have to be very, very crazy. And Smollet is the latter. A week later, a 3-judge appellate panel granted Smollet's request for bond pending appeal, and he was released from. Oh, shit. I didn't think he's watching. I had invited Art Medina to join us tonight. I don't know why that just popped into my brain, but Art, if you're watching, I apologize. I did mention we would like to have you to come on. Let's plan on that next week. Just had a brain fart, and suddenly that popped into my scope of perception. Anyway,
Yeah.
All right, so back to the article.
In the chat, though. So.
Yeah, I don't think he. Yeah, maybe he. Yeah. Well, he watches the show later though, so. Yeah, I was going to have Art on just to kind of be color commentary along with Ed and I, but it's been a pretty full show anyway, so hopefully, you're getting your money's worth if you're a Patreon supporter.
For certain, we'll have more to talk about with the new mayoral race.
Yeah.
That has begun here, and we'll be sure to have Art back on if we can.
Yeah. A week later, a 3-judge appellate panel granted Smollet's request for bond pending appeal, and he was released from Cook County Jail. Smollet's attorneys had since asked for and received several extensions to file their appeal due to delays in retrieving transcripts and other materials from the clerk's office. Do you want to say something? Do you have anything to offer?
I was promised my own streaming kit. Where is my camera?
Speaking of Kit got to go on Jimmy Dore the other day to talk about the Chicago election, which was a nice showing.
Yeah, I think we got about 20 more subscribers out of that, Jerry. So that's
did we really?
Thank you. Yeah,
you would looked on YouTube to see our subscribers went up.
Yeah, our subscribers. We got what do we got? 1590 now.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks to
Kit. Pretty close. We're pretty close to 1,600 now. So tell all your friends and family to subscribe to the channel and watch us on occasion, even.
Well, Kit does national, and he has been covering the Chicago election over in Hardlands Media because, it has been under the national spotlight, especially with
big time.
Lori's prominence. So, Jimmy and the producers invited Kit to go over there because they have a relationship with him, which is great. And I know Kit talked about it, I think, on the Hardlands show couple times this week and got invited on a Jimmy to kind of give the national audience a sense of what's happening here in Chicago, which is, what we're reporting on all the time and like to share. So those of you who may have found us by way of being Jimmy's show, we are the regular hosts here. We hope you're enjoying our commentary, and we do invite Kit to join us occasionally as well. It's just we're so heavily loaded with ourselves here and trying to squeeze or take advantage of the airtime we have to get out everything that we have to say, that like when we do invite other guests to come on, the shows go longer. We have to have less to talk about to fill that airtime. So anyway, thanks to Kit. Shout outs to him and Hardlands Media. Great showing on Jimmy Dore. Thanks for helping guide some subscribers here, Kit. Back to the article. We went totally off the road with my remembering Art. But anyway,
to recap, he's not suicidal.
He's not suicidal. Echoing previous arguments, Smollet's attorney, Nenya Uche, alleged in the filing that Smollet's rights against being re-prosecuted for the same crime were violated when Special Prosecutor Dan Webb filed disorderly conduct charges against him, even though State's Attorney Kim Fox's office. That's another one I hope goes soon. I hope that I don't know. I really hope if Brandon gets in, Commissioner Johnson. I keep calling him Brandon. Although I think it's great. We've got a new way to repurpose the Let's Go Brandon.
Yeah.
Let's go Brandon. Takes on a whole new meaning. I really hope that he doesn't embrace Attorney Kim Fox, because along with Brown, she's a fucking disaster.
Whoever the next mayor is needs to have a very long talk with Kim Fox.
Yeah.
Because every time we see some crime story going on, we find out that maybe more than half the time, it's related to somebody having been let out on bail, or having been released on, on a tracking bracelet, or what do they call those? Home monitoring bracelet.
In fact, I think this perp who shot the cop we talked about earlier in the show had been given some kind of early release. So what you're talking about, I think that was a part of like that guy's background before he shot this police officer.
And it's like, and I understand wanting to give people second chances and stuff, and trying to
violent offenders.
But yeah, you got to figure out a better way, not only for your judges, your bail setting judges, to better determine who should be allowed out and who should be staying in, But you got to have Kim Fox's office aware of all of that stuff too, because clearly stuff is not going right with those decisions right now.
Well, that would be identified too, giving people a chance so that they're not incarcerated as restorative justice, which on its face is a good thing, but not with violent offenders. And speaking of restorative justice, because that just kind of triggered something that I recall from a conversation this week, while I was editing with my documentary client on the gun violence documentary series that I've been working on, and I wasn't present for this conversation, but I don't doubt her narrative. She had dinner with someone from a restorative justice group that proposed the solution to gun crimes, and this will be a good lead-in to our next story regarding the Highland Park shooter. Solution to gun crimes by younger people is to issue FOID cards and offer training to kids from 11 years old up. I'm not making this up. And she told me she had to do everything she could to try not to like ream this person she was having dinner with a new asshole. But they were a member of restorative justice group, which shocked me. I'm like, what is the reasoning to decide, and it might be worth proposing issuing FOID cards and training to kids 11-year-old or up? Their brains are not fully formed, right?
Mm-hmm. They don't know how to make decisions.
She said, well, look, apparently, many groups think that kids can determine their gender at that age to like cut their privates off, right? They think the solution to potentially proposing giving FOID cards and training to kids that young is because you can't control the guns on the street. You may as well give kids that age an opportunity to protect themselves.
That's
and I said that reminds me of the clinics across the city that I think there was a poll, or I don't know if it was on any referendums in other neighborhoods, clinics that are open to allow drug users who are using illegal drugs to come in and use their drugs there under the supervision of counselors to make sure that they don't overdose. Why would you offer supervisors to train supervisors to overdose instead of say, okay, you're going to come here and you're going to like use illegal drugs? Why not try to like help them deal with their addictions? I mean, I know you can't force everybody off their addictions, but the idea of enabling the addiction, enabling the behavior, and this proposal of like issuing FOID cards to kids 11-year-olds and up and training them so they can identity. And I said, this restorative justice person, are you sure that they weren't a closet racist? Because essentially, so Ed is like, give all the kids in the South and West Side neighborhoods the opportunity to legally own a gun so they can all shoot each other and solve the crime problem. That's the other like conspiracy theory I'm thinking about with that kind of a proposal.
Yeah, that's a little. I'm speechless that anyone would even consider bringing that up as a restorative.
Instead of legislate and restrict ammunition, it's not on the ammunition is not part of the Second Amendment. Right to bear arms is, but not the right to bear ammunition. And there is a distinction. And if clever lawyers really wanted to like push through for that, they could. If our legislators wanted to push through for, oh, you want, man, you need this extender to run around with your big gun and act like a tough guy. Great. But you know what? You are rationed the amount of ammunition you need to go to your range or protect your home. And that does not apply to semi-automatic semi-automatic assault rifles. No, done. You don't need an assault rifle. You want a pistol? Fine. We will ration you the ammunition you need for home protection. Shooting range, guns out for sport and recreation and unwinding. Great. We will issue a certain amount of ammunition at the target range so you can shoot there. But don't think you got a right to all this ammunition because you're going to rise up against the government, because that ain't happening. Right? The solution is to give restorative justice groups to like advise, let's give 11-year-olds and up FOID cards and training. And again, this was like ludicrous to me. I'm like, was this guy serious? And she said, yeah. And I have no reason to doubt what she said. She's a straight shooter. She's not going to make something like that up. look, Ed, with the craziness that we're seeing in our society right now, with, thinking that it's okay that a kid can choose their gender and at that age and physically changing surgeries while they can't vote, they can't drink. They're certainly not supposed to have sex at that age. When gender has to do with sex, why would you think that a kid has a right to determine their sex at an early age, as opposed to maybe wait till their late teens, early adulthood? And if they have, the feelings or perceptions that they might be different, fine. Not at 11 years, not 9, 10, 11. It's fine. But that's being embraced. And I'm sorry, I'm not a right-wing crazy conservative saying that I think this is crazy. I'm as left as they come. And I'm also I'm an uncle to 6 nephews and a niece. And the younger ones I'm most concerned with is this stuff is like out on social media and in the public's perception. Kids need to be protected. And you're not protecting them by giving an opportunity to decide their gender at 9, 10, 11 years old. I
think the bigger point here, Jerry, is that kids don't have fully formed brains until they actually reach the age of 25. Kids under 18 should not be making major life decisions and should not have access to firearms.
Right. Exactly.
That's it. We don't have to go into the weeds for this conversation. It's just common sense.
I've triggered Kathy in the chat. Saving a life. Are you aware how many overdose deaths there are? Bring me on the show. Okay. And how many?
I'm with Kathy on that, actually.
Okay. You know what, Kathy? Great. So does that mean that you think that there would be more lives saved to take the same solution and give younger kids FOID cards and train them to use guns?
It's not the same thing.
It's a restorative justice issue, though. It's enabling. Okay. It's enabling something instead of trying to figure out how to treat it. When we talk about treatment, not trauma, Ed, let me and I'll shut up in a moment. Okay, what you have to say. But when we talk about treatment, not trauma, we're talking about treating people to get better and get well. I know people have substance abuse problems. I can't even imagine what their problems are that cause them to self-medicate in ways that they have to because they've got a rough life. I get that, but when you're talking about the clinics that people can come shoot up illegal drugs in, and I don't know enough about it, Kathy, but I would imagine in hope that there's an element to those clinics would also try to offer addiction services and counseling to get who are coming in off of their habits. So
that's what I was going to say.
Let me clarify. Okay. I'm letting them down so that you're not saving lives. Great. They save lives. But is there an element that is focused on not just allowing them a safe place to shoot up with the illegal drugs, but also offer some counseling and therapy to try to get them off that habit? Because that's part of the treatment in centers like that. No, I don't have trouble walking in someone else's shoes, Kathy. No, not at all. Not at all. And I really resent that remark. Because if anybody is trying to advocate for people here that are vulnerable and don't have a chance, I didn't say close the clinics. I said if you're only going to serve people to come in and shoot up with illegal drugs and you're not offering options to also treat and counsel and help with the addiction, I'm sorry, it's enabling it. And you know what? I lost a friend recently, a very good friend, because I was not willing to enable their behavior. Things that I saw that were unhealthy. I feel really bad about it, but I could not. Being a friend does not mean enabling and allowing not trying to intervene and help in some way to prevent the constant bad decisions and other things. So when we're talking about restorative justice, or we're talking about these clinics, or giving kids FOID cards and training them to be able to defend themselves with guns, that's enabling a problem. It's not getting to the root cause of the problem or offering an alternative to solve the problem, as I said. And that's my opinion. But don't ever say I'm not able to walk in other people's shoes. That's just blatantly false and untrue. Yeah, alcohol used to be illegal, and I don't think that alcohol abuse is any better, Kathy, at all. Some people can handle their liquor, others can't. Drugs get you higher faster and can cause more damage shorter term than alcohol longer term is the way it destroys your brain and affects your liver and causes all kinds of other problems. They're both pretty bad. So anyway. And I love you, Kathy, but this comment really bugs me. I have trouble walking in other people's shoes. Really? Come on. You know me better than that. Go ahead, Ed.
I just wanted to say I'm not as concerned about people taking drugs as it seems you are, just because I'm coming from a perspective that and I think I'm getting where Kathy's coming from with her alcohol comment, in that there are some drugs that are federally illegal, like marijuana, for example, but are legal in a number of states. Okay.
Well, marijuana is a whole other issue. That's about taxation.
We can talk about things like heroin and the level of addictiveness that drug has, and the fact that, well, it's not as easy as flipping a switch and just stopping for drugs like that. So
I know it's not.
So I can see the value and the benefit of having a safe place for people to shoot up while they're trying to figure out what their next step is and to possibly getting off of that. And that's why they have I forget what the hell
methadone clinics.
The methadone,
yeah.
and why public libraries carry that type of stuff or was it Narcan or whatever for potential overdoses. I mean, yeah, you want to. I think prevention and trying to wean people off of these bad habits is probably the better way to go. But I think there's also an understanding that there are going to be people who are not going to be ready to give that up right away. And would you rather they be in a dirty alley shooting up with dirty needles and possibly committing crimes and all this other stuff? Or would you rather have them in a more controlled situation where there's the potential for someone to help them maybe get off of that?
I would lean with the latter, Ed, and I think that I would. And the only reason I brought up these clinics that offer support and a safe place to do that was I was kind of using it as a parallel to the thinking of the problem solving of, well, if you can't stop people from shooting up, provide them a place that it's safe so that they don't kill themselves. And it's like, so to prevent innocent kids from getting shot on the streets by gangs, let's give them guns and FOID cards. That was, I
can see where you're going with the analogy. I just think it's not quite an apt one, in my opinion.
Okay.
I don't think it's a fair comparison there.
Well, not a comparison, but a parallel.
Yeah.
And we totally went off reads with that, but because
we were talking about Jussie.
We were talking about Jussie, but we were also talking about this was leading into our next story about the Highland Park shooter, which is what I guess I should have saved the conversation about the FOID cards and the restorative justice for the story about. Let's finish the Jussie story. Smollet held up his to recap. He's pissed off because he thought that he suffered double jeopardy. Smollet held up his end of the controversial deal, forfeiting his $10,000 bond to the city of Chicago, reimbursing for an investigation into the alleged attack and performing community service at the Reverend Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Foundation, according to the brief. Mr. Smollet's negotiated bail bond forfeiture and performance of community service during his first prosecution constituted punishment, and thus his second prosecution and punishment for the same offenses violated the double jeopardy clause protection against multiple punishments for the same offense.
All right, I see where he's going with that.
Uche also wrote, but you know what? Doesn't contrition reflect? Okay, yeah, he still claims he's innocent, Ed.
Yeah, that's a problem.
It's a problem. It's clear he was a liar, but he still is doubling down and making a. You know what? Just you fucked up, dude. You made a stupid decision. You know what? You got a lot of money. You're still the extreme left's woke left's darling. Just take it up, take your losses and move on. Given the fact that it's very clear he lied and he still thinks he's pulling one over on people. Uche also wrote that the only reason there was even a second indictment was because of, that's not law. That's my opinion. There's a difference between law and justice, unfortunately. Law doesn't always serve justice. Right now, the law is being enforced here. It might not be justice to him, but that's just what the letter of the law is. Uche also wrote that the only reason there was even a second indictment was because the resolution by Fox's office of the first case was not well received by the public. Well, tough titty, prompting a pro se petition for the appointment of a special prosecutor by a concerned citizen, quote unquote. Smollet's attorney also took issue with several rulings by Lynn, both before and during the trial, including denying the defense access to notes of interviews Webb's office conducted with key witnesses, barring defense attorneys from directly questioning prospective jurors during jury selection, and failing to give the jury a specific instruction warning about the testimony of star witness Abimbola Osandero. Uche also accused Lynn of being dismissive of the defense and openly hostile at times during the trial, particularly when the defense tried to flesh out its theory that police had failed to consider that Smollet was the victim of a bona fide attack driven by the homophobic motive of his attackers. We know what the facts were, dude. Stop. Quote, the trial court in front of the jury again rushed defense counsel's cross-examination and accused the defense counsel without justification of quote-unquote editorializing, Uche wrote. That's their job. That's their job, is to poke holes in Smollet's narrative. And the police provided the evidence of that. So what? They're not supposed to do that? That's what a good prosecutor or defense counsel is supposed to do for their clients. Lynn's alleged bias against Smollet was also evident in sentencing. Uche said, where the judge's closing remarks demonstrated that Mr. Smollet's sentencing took on a personal retributive tone. Tough shit. He's lucky he didn't get thrown into a tougher prison that he ended up in. But he's privileged. Uche singled out Lynn's remarks that Smollet was a hypocrite on social justice issues who wanted to throw a national pity party, and that the actor was selfish, arrogant, and narcissistic for using up policing resources for his benefit.
Mm-hmm.
What part of that's wrong? What part of that's wrong? It's an opinion, but it's not wrong. It's an opinion born from facts and evidence. There's an example of an opinion being formed by facts. And the brief said Lynn's remarks that Smollet had ripped scabs off some healing wounds of America's past and social injustice were highly inappropriate. Again, tough titty. Smollet's bizarre saga began on a cold January night in 2019 when the Empire star, who was black and openly gay, reported to Chicago police that he'd been attacked by two men while out getting food from a Subway sandwich shop around 2 a.m. Do you remember Dave Chappelle's recounting of this story?
I remember when we listened to it, but I didn't remember the details.
It's hilarious. Go watch it on YouTube afterwards. Well, you went out for a sandwich at 2 a.m. at Subway?
Subway's not open at 2 a.m.
Some are downtown. There are some late ones. Smollet reported that the men yelled racial and homophobic slurs, declared this is MAGA country, hit him and wrapped a noose around his neck. Because, MAGA people just routinely carry nooses around in their pockets, along with
nobody does. Nobody does that.
Smollet's accusations made worldwide headlines and prompted many fellow actors and public officials, including future Vice President Kamala Harris, to decry the attack. Skepticism quickly grew around Smollet's claims, though, and the story fell apart the following month after police interviewed Abimbola and Olabinjo Osandero, the two brothers prosecutors said were hired to stage the attack. You were going to say it?
Well, you brought up Vice President Kamala Harris, and I'm, I would roll my eyes, but I'm just too tired, Jerry.
I like what Kathy says. This is how we need to treat Jussie. Give him some Thorazine. Yes, he is.
Is that legal? Thorazine?
Cook County prosecutors charged Smollet. Well, we know the whole story. I mean, that's the update. That's the update. I just thought, a jury convicted Smollet in December 2021. Out of 6 felony counts for disorderly conduct for staging a fake hate crime, the prosecutor said was carried out by the two brothers Smollet hired to do the job. And he's still
in a nutshell, he just doesn't want to get prosecuted a second time, and he's saying it's double jeopardy.
Yeah.
Since he feels like he served his time already, except if he's still going to go around telling people he's innocent.
That's the problem, Ed. There's no contrition or owning up to what he did. He's still doubling down because he thinks people are stupid, which I think is a complete level of contempt for not just regular people, but his own community. Because there are a lot of people in the Black community who believe he was victimized. And it's like, and because he won't double down, he's taking advantage of their naivete, their goodwill towards, trying to see the best in somebody to benefit himself. And in the end, he's only benefiting himself. He's not benefiting the larger issue of what that anti-lynching bill was all about. He may think he did, but it's, again, with all of the racial tensions already existing in Chicago, he was basically, had anybody believed him, they could have potentially lit a powder keg and caused a whole other bunch of problems that we're already dealing with. So, this isn't too terrifying. This comes from the Jason Meisner and Robert McCoppin at the Chicago Tribune. Feds found bomb-making components in Highland Park massacre suspect's home, an unsealed warrant says. By the way, his father was also, I believe that there were some charges in court that, God, I just read it last week. He was convicted on some charges related to enabling the crime.
Yeah, because I think he vouched for him to get his Floyd card. Was it? I think. Yeah.
So Big Daddy up in Highland Park, who knew his son was a had mental problems, and decided to sign for his card and pull rank or pull some favors with the state police. Thankfully, he's being held just as complicit in the tragedy that happened July 4th. But lucky that the kid didn't take it as far as he thought he would, because the feds found bomb-making components in the suspect's home. We know he's not a suspect. We know he did it. A federal search warrant unsealed Thursday alleges bomb-making materials were found in the apartment of Highland Park massacre suspect Robert Cremo III, who allegedly told authorities in an interview he'd contemplated bringing improvised explosive devices to the 4th of July parade route, but decided that they were too heavy. Okay, if there is any clear case for the importance of mental health counseling, not just at a level, here in Chicago, this kid's father was in denial about the fact his kid needed mental health counseling. I mean, I hold the kid responsible, but I hold more responsibility towards the family that enabled him. And he threatened his own family with knives. That was apparently part of his record with the Highland Park Police Department. This wasn't the first time the police department in Highland Park had heard about this guy. And even though he had threatened his family with knives and the police came out and intervened, his father after that still thought it was reasonable to enable his son or show his son he was a good guy by vouching for him to get to get through the background check, to get the weapons that were used in the 4th of July attack. What is the stigma about people realizing somebody needs some mental health intervention? It shouldn't be a stigma. You shouldn't be ashamed if you have a kid that needs help and you need to get him help instead of enabling it and basically opening up the potential of something like this to happen for someone who's that far gone as this kid Cremo was. If everything lined up, if everything lined up correctly, then I would use it. But it didn't, Cremo allegedly told investigators who questioned him about the explosive materials in a recorded interview on July 5th. The new details were contained in an FBI affidavit. You say affidavit. Affidavit. Okay. That's not a Shatner.
Sabotage.
The new details were contained in an FBI affidavit to search mails connected to Cremo, as well as a computer hard drive found in the wake of the 4th of July parade attack that killed 7 people and wounded dozens more. According to the documents, which were unsealed at the request of federal prosecutors Thursday, investigators who searched the Highwood home where Cremo lived with his uncle discovered a remote initiator, jugs with ammunition, and boxes of tannerite, a commercial component used for exploding targets. You remember when his uncle went on the news and said, "We didn't know," his uncle was crying, "We didn't know this could happen. I have no idea why this happened, how he did this stuff."
What? So you didn't happen to notice he had all of this stuff? I mean, come on.
In an upstairs bedroom, Agents also found electrical components, a timer, and electric matches, according to the affidavit. Invoices found on Cremo's phone indicated Cremo or do you say Cremo or Crimo? Who knows?
It's both at this point.
Yeah. Invoices found in this punk's phone. Let's just call him the punk. Invoices found on the punk's phone indicated the punk had ordered a 10-pound shipment of tannerite from Oregon about a month before the attack, the affidavit alleged.
That didn't set off red flags?
Yeah, that's true. That stuff's not supposed to cross state lines without some kind of oversight.
What the fuck? Yeah, I used the F word, Jerry.
Do you know how hard it is to go get cold medicine from Target? You're only allowed a certain amount of cold medicine before they say, sorry, you can't get any more, because clearly you're going to go, use this stuff for your meth lab, right? You can't get cold medication over the counter. But this punk could order a 10-pound shipment of tannerite from Oregon, and the people who shipped it to him didn't identify on the package what it was. That stuff is labeled and identified.
I mean, there should be,
and you have to
certain elements that get shipped should be tracked in a database, so that dangerous elements, so that the people who need to know that these things are traveling from one place to another know they're doing it. I mean, we just had that giant chemical derailment in Ohio there, and they knew what they had on those train cars, and I don't know where I was going with this, other than they know what to know. They know
dangerous
where they're going.
Dangerous materials are documented when they're in transit, and you're not. That's an explosive material that they're shipping across state lines. That should have flagged something with in the ordering process. Look, if he had to order the tannerite from Oregon, Ed, he couldn't. I don't think he could get it here. Crimo allegedly told agents that the explosive devices were too heavy to carry to the parade, but he considered using them if the opportunity arose. Later in interviews, he said it could have been planted if it worked. In theory, it could have been planted somewhere where it could come. If it worked, I might have planted it early, or I might have just sat down, left the bag there, and walked away. You can scroll up, and there's imagery of what they found of the bomb-making materials. I'm sure we're going to get a YouTube copyright strike because this is sensitive material we're reporting on, but fuck them. There you go. Look at that. Wow. The affidavit also alleged Crimo admitted he'd made electrical circuits in the past, and he had the idea in my mind that it could be used for nefarious reasons. Crimo, you have a kid ordering this stuff, living in his uncle's home. His uncle doesn't see this stuff come in. He's living with the uncle because the parents can't deal with him. Crimo allegedly told investigators that once he'd loaded all the tannerite into the jugs, you know why I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for this kid? Because he's unrepentant. I mean, he has to confess because he has to confess. But this kid, does he need mental help? Sure. But he's a sociopath. He didn't have any remorse or conscience about what he was doing.
No,
and that's
this
the level
guy
of
belongs in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah, he belongs in Arkham Asylum. We've got a cell waiting for him there. Crimo allegedly told investigators that once he'd loaded all the tannerite into jugs, they would have weighed at least 20 pounds, which would have been too much because he was also carrying his rifle. He wouldn't have wanted to be inconvenienced. When agents pressed him on whether he would have actually used the IEDs in the Highland Park attack, Crimo allegedly responded, for this one, no. I had just, possibly if the situations were to line up correctly, maybe. The affidavit also said Crimo seemed to waffle on his intent for the explosives. At one point, he said he probably would not have followed through because the materials were unstable. Oh, he didn't want to blow his own hand off. He was willing to kill other people. Later, though, he said he wanted them to work, so he purchased commercially available tannerite rather than using an alternative source of ammonium nitrate. Crimo said he'd prepared the bomb components a couple of months before the attack and kept it locked up so family members would not get hurt because it looked nefarious, the affidavit
Really?
said. I was either going to rip it up and throw it away or use it, but the situation didn't arise for it to be used, Crimo was quoted in the affidavit as saying. Crimo, 22, is accused of opening fire on the assembled crowd July 4th of 2022 with an assault rifle from the roof of the downtown store.
Did he happen to say why the hell he did this?
Let's see if they've established motive yet. After the shooting, the warrant stated Cremo walked first to his mother's house nearby in Highland Park, then drove to his father's home. Then he drove to Madison, Wisconsin, the Madison, Wisconsin area, and buried his phone there, but investigators traced and recovered it. Cremo was arrested the evening of July 4th after driving back to near North Chicago. Investigators said he admitted to the shooting during questioning after his arrest. He has since pled not guilty to
What? How?
to 7 murder charges among more than 100 felony counts and is awaiting trial because he's a sociopath. He has no conscience. This is the element of sociopathy where it goes into psychopathy. Okay. Not all socialists are psychopaths, but all psychopaths are sociopaths because there's that element of you don't have a conscience, you don't have remorse for what you do. And he takes it further into like actually carrying out physical crimes that could physically hurt and kill people, not just like the mental abuse most sociopaths engage in inflicting on other people.
But it's perplexing though, because it's like, I mean, okay, he's clearly wanting to know whether or not he could, but what, and not really worried so much about whether he should. But the question is, what was his motivation? Why did he even bother to want to do this in the first place?
It's good point, Ed. I haven't seen any. I mean, maybe they're not revealing that because it could potentially, maybe there's a mental health element here in his claims that he's not guilty that the prosecutors don't want to reveal because it could be used as an advantage by the defense. I don't know. Now, interestingly enough, no federal charges have been filed as part of this investigation. Cremo's court-appointed attorney in the murder case could not immediately be reached for comment. Now, here's the point about his father. Robert Cremo Jr. was charged with reckless conduct in connection with his son's case. Lake County authorities allege it was reckless for the father to vouch for his then underage son in 2019 on state forms that allowed the son to purchase guns. The federal warrants also revealed a number of other details from the investigation, among them. Investigators also found a destroyed MacBook with the phrase, "Are you awake?" on the cover. Cremo III, who sometimes went by the moniker Awake the Rapper, had Awake tattooed on his face, told investigators that he committed the shooting. Here you go. Here's your motive, Ed. To wake people up.
Okay, but about what? Because, I mean, you got to be a little more specific. There's a lot of crap going on in the world right now.
And you don't wake people up by hurting others. It's not we're trying to wake people up here in our own, probably
but
way.
We're not using ammunition.
We're not hurting people, although some people's feelings might be hurt, but
yeah.
I'm talking yes, it's true. I'm talking about you, Lori Lightfoot. In a video posted online that was attributed to Cremo III, and remember we ran those videos because we found him, and then suddenly we got a strike on our channel for reporting the news and sharing what this kid had shared that was allowed to be online for months before the actual crime. It was okay for those videos of him running around intimating he was going to shoot a crowd. That was okay, but when we reported on it and shared the videos wondering why the hell wasn't anybody paying attention to this when he had a lot of people watching him and followers and likes and stuff. In a video posted online that was attributable to Cremo III, the affidavit stated, is a drawing of someone pointing a rifle at others, one of whom is lying on the ground, the affidavit stated. Investigators were also looking into potential co-conspirators in the massacre, noting that Cremo said he traveled the country in previous years and stayed with people he met in an online forum.
Okay, well, that could be why they're holding back on federal prosecution. Maybe they're trying to draw some people out.
Could be. Authorities at the time said they were investigating potential motives for the shooting, including targeting particular groups. So there's your question about more motives, an explanation about. And by the way, we still have not managed to uncover the motive in the let's get the video ready here. Although I do have an update on that. Let me get the video going. No, not that one, not that one. Can you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I do know what you're talking about.
I got it.
Yeah, no idea where those wings are.
We've long been speculating on the motives and where the wings are. Well, I can report, I can't promise, but I can report I have an inside source that's looking into it. Developments on the case
Good.
regarding the what I guess the discovery and finding out if there's why nobody's followed up on the story publicly to say where the wings went.
Yeah, we need. I mean, I can't even find publicly available information on the court case for Vera Liddell. So,
well, my inside source works within the courts, so let's keep our fingers crossed that they, and I'm not identifying them, can perhaps get some answers for us, because I know that Ed has been losing endless nights of sleep over this.
Yes, I have. I'm on all of the search engines 24/7 searching for any information on where those wings went. No,
so I'm waiting for the Twitter window to load. Why does Twitter take? You know what it is? I think Twitter takes a lot of time to load because I'm also streaming, so it's probably the upstream that's affecting the downstream from Twitter to load when I'm trying to load a screen here.
Oh,
it
could be the Elon just hates you.
I've never done anything to insult Elon. I don't think.
Are you looking for this one?
Yeah, you've got it queued up.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to read from. I need it queued up anyway to read from it, but go ahead. Our show notes reflect that this is an infrastructure update regarding Norfolk Southern expanding down in Englewood, and someone tweeted this and shared 34,000 passengers a day ride across this bridge in Chicago. Now, this is not I don't know that this is a Norfolk Southern trestle, but 34,000 passengers a day ride this bridge in Chicago. That's the base of it, everybody. This is the infrastructure we're talking about all the time.
It's precarious and terrifying, and there's a number of supports like that on bridges and underpasses throughout the city.
So in the comments, yikes, is that a commuter train bridge? MC Squared responds, yes. Daniel Ilchuk, what do you mean rust is the new steel? Haven't you heard it's all the rage in Pittsburgh? Let's see what else is in here. I just think, I mean, this might not be Norfolk Southern, but when we were talking about the decay of Norfolk Southern's infrastructure with the expansion that they want to do in light of what happened in Ohio, not only are we, wide open for the same kind of disaster happening here because the infrastructure is falling apart, but you've got the risk of regular commuter passengers having to cross this bridge with a rotting, decaying steel support. Oh, here's more. That bridge has already been refurbished and a new station is being built there right now. Okay, great.
Okay. Well, at least one thing is fixed.
Yeah.
Probably because that original photo got published. They probably got embarrassed.
Let's not forget Rahm Emanuel's Belmont flyover that's supposed to save like a few minutes off of commuters from the north side in the suburbs getting downtown. There were pictures taken of it falling apart, pieces falling off of the cement sidings at the Belmont.
Fixed last year, apparently. Okay.
Oh, so this is a Norfolk Southern bridge.
Yep.
The good news is it's not 34,000 at a time. On a serious note, they should probably call a guy to inspect this.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I have to keep clicking the link to get the more replies. Otherwise, they're trying to basically shift gears and get me to look at something else. It's like they don't want us reading the timeline on this.
No, Elon's got to make his money back for the investment he put into Twitter. So you're now getting barraged by
but you see how it like goes. It like you really want to see more tweets replying to this thing, and you have to click on the show more replies thing. But then if you're not paying attention, you keep scrolling, and then it's just more tweets.
Yeah,
they don't want you reading this.
Yeah,
because if more people were really following the entire set of replies in the timeline, I think more people would get angry.
Yeah. They don't want any attention on this.
Why are we spending 1/10 of what we need to spend on infrastructure when we keep funneling billions and billions of dollars into a proxy war? Why? I don't understand why more people aren't seeing this for what it is.
Ed, someone on my Facebook, and I can share this story because they don't watch the show, made some kind of a snarky comment on my Facebook page regarding the story of Jamal's bus breaking down that they had seen on social media. And they posted on my Facebook page rather snidely, because I think that they saw I supported Jamal. Why don't you cover this story on your show? And I wrote him back, actually, we did Tuesday night. Here's a link. You should tune in and watch. And he said, well, I don't watch. It's not my cup of tea. Too many negative stories and conspiracy theories. And I wrote back,
how would you know if you don't watch?
Yeah. Well, apparently you watched it one time. And I said, I don't know what conspiracy theories you're alluding to. We don't we have opinions here. I don't know that I qualify them as conspiracy theories based on the facts that we're reading news stories and basically trying to form our opinions from facts. But I said, here's the thing. I don't like reporting on all these negative stories myself every Tuesday and Friday. But unfortunately, there's a faction of vulnerable people in the city that live on the south and west sides and neighborhoods that the privileged don't have to live in, that are affected by all the corrupt negative news across the city. That's why we feel it's a duty to report on this stuff, to try to, shed light on it. So maybe more people will come out to vote or recognize what the problems are.
Also, it's a bit of a deflection to call things conspiracy theories and dismiss them outright, because the truth is, what a conspiracy theory is speculation. It's you getting information, trying to wrap your head around it and come to a possible conclusion, which may or may not be true, but it doesn't mean that it's not possible. So if someone says it's a conspiracy and a theory, it means they think maybe there's a conspiracy to do something, and maybe it's possible that it happened, and you should not dismiss it outright.
Our good friend Lainey agrees with you, Ed. Lainey Peterson, welcome to the chat. Good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight. Hey, Lainey, we're going to see you soon. So, and here's the funny thing too, I can share, since he doesn't watch the show. I'm certainly not going to reveal who he is, but his timeline is pretty much peppered with, went to go see this movie. I really recommend that you drop acid before you see it. It's a different experience, or you get high to see this movie. And I'm like, if you're medicating to just ignore what's really happening in the world, that's fine. I don't care. But the fact that you think that we're being too negative here and you're not your cup of tea means you don't want to deal with the realities that unfortunately a lot of other people have to deal with, which is why we're talking about this stuff all the time. Oh, all right, Lainey, I'll share it. All right. You're right. I was being diplomatic, but you're right. Yeah, he is. Sadly. And I like the guy. He's a friend. I took the tone of like the whole campaign bus thing as being snarky, because I've been very vocal about my support of Green on social media, and he didn't win. And, we kind of joked about the sad metaphor of the broken down bus Tuesday. I think Jamal hopefully has a sense of humor about it. We love the guy, but, for that to kind of devolve into, oh, you're negative. Well, if you're self-medicating all the time because you don't want to deal with reality, I guess I can see why.
Yep.
All right. Final story of. Oh, go ahead.
So we got you guys should show that one story on your show. We did show that story last night. Oh, you should watch that story sometime. Oh, I don't watch shows.
Then why did you tell us we should report on it?
Oh,
if you're not going to watch it.
I just assumed that you weren't telling stories on shows because I don't watch shows.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I mean, he didn't respond, and that's fine. I mean, it's not breaking my friendship with him. I respect the guy; he's a good guy. But I just thought it was ironic, that whole line of back and forth, and it's like conspiracy theories. We're too negative. I wish there was more to report on that was positive. Now, this piece that comes to us from the Onion that we're going to close the show with, I think reflects the future that many hope to see, or many of us hope not to see. If wins, this comes to us from the Onion. They're reporting, city is finally safe after every single resident is hired as a police officer. Oh, there's one of those kids in the corner who's got his Ford card and gun training with a flak jacket. Got our seniors in the forefront here. We got the toddler down here in the corner. Chicago, Dateline Chicago. In a rousing success story that has eliminated all criminal activity from the streets of the metropolis, Chicago was finally declared safe Thursday after every single resident was hired as a police officer. As a part of our initiative to ensure complete security throughout the city, we have deputized all 2.7 million of our residents, said Superintendent of Police David O'Neill Brown, who explained that each and every person living within Chicago has been issued a gun and a badge and given approximately 2,500 square feet to patrol, allowing the city to at long last be adequately policed. Because that's essentially what you're going to need, as opposed to, I don't know, reallocating funds to helping people.
Just deputize everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The initial response has been promising. We've seen a dramatic increase in police seizures of civil assets, while robberies have become a thing of the past. And at the same time, we've seen the murder rate drop to zero as the justifiable use of deadly force reaches an all-time high. At press time, everyone in Chicago had been killed after the entire city erupted in friendly fire.
Yeah.
Love the Onion.
Or the opposite happens in that because all of them are cops, they won't shoot each other.
Thank you for the $2 super
On
sticker,
purpose.
lady. Yeah, you're right. Did we get any comments from Rockfin tonight?
We had a pre-show comment in there from someone named Aram, and I have no idea what it means.
Oh, okay.
I could share it, I suppose.
Sure. Maybe we can try to see if there's some code to decipher here collectively as a Chicago Corner community.
Yeah, we could try. I mean, it says, looking left, looking right, looking up, yodelay-hee-hoo, and then a bunch of more yodeling.
That was before the show started. I actually remember seeing that. Maybe he was like waiting for us and trying to.
Oh, that could be. He probably tuned in before we got started.
Yeah.
Which is a neat feat indeed.
Well, that's our show. That's our post-election coverage, which was a lot of fun to go through, analyze the new candidates in Commissioner Johnson and Palos Paul the Privatizer Johnson. I'm sorry, Palos Paul the Privatizer Vallis is what I meant to say. Any closing?
I gotta work on a voice for him. I don't know if I'm just gonna do this kind of weird Cornholio-esque voice, but because this is not what Paul Vallis sounds like at all. But we may just go with this.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah. So Kathy's. Thank you, Kathy. We don't spread enough conspiracies.
We can try.
We certainly can. Meet for coffee? Sure. Sometimes, yeah. When I'm not driving down to the south side to edit for my client or doing show prep here, we'll see if we can make that happen, Kathy. And I do appreciate your support as a patron of the show. And although I might get a little, riled up at, in our discourse or disagreement, it's never personal, I just want to make sure that I can walk in other people's shoes. I try to do that as often as I can, but I also just don't feel like I can. Those shoes can't also make excuses or enable things that we should also be paying attention to. So
I find that most other people's shoes are fairly uncomfortable. That's why I try to just stay in my own for a while. Although I don't know if that's metaphorical or not. But I do try to think about what other people do. And I wonder, is this the guy to really help us turn it around? Will people be able to help him and will the former candidates who also ran against him be willing to help him?
All I can say is that in this race, I'm not going to define it as the lesser of two evils. I'm going to define it as the better of two choices. Okay. Yeah. Because I'm completely willing to admit I've been wrong in the past. There were some things that came out towards the end of Amara Enya's campaign that I wasn't too thrilled to discover. That as much as I liked her, and I felt that her policy strategies were sound, there were other things that manifested that I thought, maybe this wasn't the time for her. Okay. I voted for Lori Lightfoot. We all did, because she hoodwinked us into thinking that she was a progressive reformer. And she was just Rom 2.0, 2 inches shorter. Now, in the choice between Johnson and Vallis, I don't think we could do worse. I don't think we could do as worse with Johnson as we could with Vallis, for the points that I stated at the top end of the show. He wants to open up. Chicago is going to be more open to business under Palos Paul than it's going to be serving all of the people that are impacted by what's going on, that we're screaming about with our hair on fire every Tuesday and Friday. Mm-hmm. And I do think Johnson is a little bit more focused on equity in this class struggle. That's not just happening in Chicago; it's happening across the country.
Yeah. And we had this conversation before, that who did we think was going to be the most like Harold Washington? And while that's an easy call in a head-to-head race that we've got now.
Yes,
that's easy.
It is, especially in light of the fact we had this great image that pretty much, where is it here? Pretty much demonstrates that as soon as it opens up. Hang on, guys. Stand by, stand by, stand by. Oh, it's not the right screen. Stop that screen. Present this screen. Boom. I mean, the irony is not lost, even like kind of down to some physical appearances, right?
It's very weird to see back to back like that, because it's kind of the same race.
Past certainly is prologue, isn't it? And thankfully, I think Commissioner Johnson probably will take a little bit better care of his health to stick around a little bit longer if he wins, and we hope he does. Now, one other thing I forgot to share during the show was we didn't really have an opportunity. We should have. It was something that kind of slipped my mind here, but I want to show, this was covered pretty extensively by the newspapers this week, who won which wards. Interesting how much of the North Side Commissioner Johnson led in. And how much of the South Side. Okay, so here's the North Side. This, I'm going to assume, is Navy Pier, right? That area there.
I can't read the legend.
Okay, so the orange is Brandon Johnson.
Okay.
And Johnson handily took the North Side. This area here, this green area, the Chicago area, that is Paul Vallis. And they don't have the neighborhoods identified or the wards, but I always look at a map of Chicago. Okay. Yeah, I look at maps of Chicago. Whenever I see the little thing sticking out, I know that's Navy Pier. So that's the downtown area. Now, interestingly enough, South Side, Lori Lightfoot.
Yeah, she was in blue. Is that right?
Yeah. Now, huge saturation of blue, but that was not a whole lot of people that voted there. Of those that voted, those are the neighborhoods she took. Down in the south suburbs, or south side, bordering south suburbs, Paul Vallis. Up here, this is Copland. Okay, Paul Vallis. Here, west side, mainly Latino and Hispanic, Chuy Garcia.
Now take this map with a little grain of salt, because remember there were 9 candidates running.
Right. Yeah.
So there was a lot of vote splitting going on. And so if you had people who coalesced around one candidate enough to get a majority in those areas.
But now, one of the things that I do recall Jamal remarking on Twitter, and maybe that was the tweet that he deleted, I don't know, was the fact that Johnson was so supported by North Siders, which are, I would argue, maybe more predominantly white. White progressives on the North Side supported Johnson. What happened down here on the South Side that supported Lori Lightfoot? That, I think, speaks to the what I was talking about with the interests and the concerns of the African American community in the South and West Sides being so divided that Lori still handily got the majority in that part of the city. So just interesting to see how it all broke down with the color coded legend there.
Yeah,
So,
and again, you also have to realize that a good portion of the city is propagandized by mainstream media. So
Yeah.
whatever narratives they were feeding them on the local channels was probably misinforming them, along with all the mudslinging TV and radio ads.
yeah. It didn't help that you goddamn kvetching peasants here at Chicago Corner sabotaged my chances of a second term. God damn you all. I won't forget this.
Yeah, we know, but we'll follow you on LinkedIn.
Speaking of Lori, our dearly departed Madame Mayor, whose political grave we've been dancing on all night long. I'm definitely going to share our goodbye video to Lori as we close out the show tonight. But before we close out the show, anything coming up that you want to share or that we should wrap up before we share our good wishes with our loyal audience here on the corner?
Oh, well, I did want to show off my really cool new T-shirt that I got Sunday night at the Otoboki Beaver punk rock concert over at Talia Hall. It's
nice.
Pretty badass, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
What has it got listed on the back? Tour dates?
It's tour dates. The show apparently was sold out. So they're popular. And so I got to hang out with my younger brother. And we snuck my niece in. I think she's 17, but I'm not really sure. And for legal purposes, she was definitely old enough to attend the event. And it was pretty good. There was a local band that opened for them called Ganser, Ganser, and they're also worth a look. So check those bands out on YouTube. I think it's worth your while.
Very cool. Well, I completely in all of the excitement of this election cycle and the voting this week, I forgot that season 3 of The Mandalorian premiered this week. So I'm going to go tune into episode 1 tonight.
Oh yeah, I watched that.
I saw Ant-Man last week. Wasn't impressed.
I haven't seen that yet.
You're not missing anything. And tomorrow I get to spend a lovely Saturday with my nephews, babysitting for them. We play lots of video games and watch lots of movies. I can't wait. Love spending time with my nephews, my sister Christina's boys. And then I will have dinner with my parents on Sunday. It's going to be a good weekend. I need the break with family to decompress. Although I know I'll hear from my mom about her opinion. You know, I told my mom, she's always text messaging me on why I'm wrong about things. I'm wrong about Val, and that's fine. She's entitled to her opinion. But I poked fun at her the other night. I'm like, for all the opinions, Mom, you tell me that no one wants to hear from me. You certainly have a lot. Maybe you should get a YouTube show.
Yeah. Or maybe we should start a character of Jerry's mom for
or have her on the
Corner.
show, or just have her on the show with my dad. I've already,
Right.
I talked. That would be
if
fun.
you want to make a graphic overlay of your mom, and then we can just put her up on the screen and have her say stuff that she actually said in real life.
I could not do that. She's
she would disown you, right?
She would disown me. Look,
Yeah.
I have a certain self-awareness that I can be very self-effacing about myself, and I have no problem poking fun at myself or other people poking fun at me. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot to poke fun at. But my mom,
I guess it's a red line, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, she takes it a little bit more personally, and I
Hi, Jerry's mom.
Hi, Jerry's mom. She takes it personally when she shouldn't because it's never personal. I just always say, hey, we have to break up the tension with laughter. Otherwise, we'd be crying or wanting to blow our brains out. So why not take a chance, take a moment to laugh about ourselves? It certainly lessens the tension. But yeah, I would prefer to have her on and express her views and her opinions. And if she wanted to come on and give her the floor, not just have me bellowing my with my big mouth all the time.
Yeah.
And as Kathy says, mothers are entitled.
You should definitely have your mom on to co-host some night. In fact, she should just have her own show.
We'll have a spinoff show at Chicago Corner. Lainey, yes, you wish my mom well. Thank you. She needs that with the type, given the type of son I am that's always causing her worry and stress. We all wish her well and love her. All right. And Kathy says it's Women's Month. What about that? Screw Google says, hi, Jerry's mom. Yeah, I wouldn't want to share some of her texts on the show because perhaps she would thinks that she would be misrepresented in her intent, which would not be my intent at all. But no, someone needs to, like, if they want to share something, I'm not going to share.
No, she'd have to give you the okay to share.
Yeah. And I'd rather that she represent herself. So I don't think it'll ever happen. But Mom, the invitation's always open, as well as Dad. I talked about having Dad on in the past sometimes. So that's our show, everybody.
Yes, Kathy wanted to come on the show too, so we should probably make that happen soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Kathy's been watching Picard, and I've heard that third season is actually good. The first couple seasons were really critically lambasted, but my understanding is that they've taken the show back to formula, especially in light of the fact they've brought back a lot of the original cast members from the original run who were not present in the previous.
Oh, from Next Generation, you mean?
Yeah. So I'll have to check that one out too.
Yeah, I'll have to find somebody who has a password I can borrow. To watch the rest of Picard.
I also started, didn't get through it because I'm turning this off.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saving it to watch with my dad this Sunday on Netflix. All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh.
I started watching it and I'm like,
I think I read that book.
If this movie, this first 15 minutes I'm watching, does not just completely illustrate to people why in the 21st century we're still having arguments about war or question or wanting to be, anti-war critics are criticized or villainized. Nothing's changed. Nothing's changed from the trenches of World War I to what we're seeing right now over in Ukraine. It's madness. War is madness. And nothing's changed. Maybe the weapons have changed, but you are recruiting, you are enlisting young people who, some of which don't have the critical thinking skills to understand how they're being exploited for the ends and goals of the rich. Same in World War I, same right now. Maybe not World War II. World War II is actually a much more well-defined war as far as
this is more like a Vietnam kind of situation, which is kind of weird because I think just recently our Governor Pritzker was trying to once again promote the possibility of getting a Democratic convention to come here, and that'll be kind of crazy.
Look also at the fact that Zelensky just said that American kids are going to have to start entering this war because he went so far as to, basically share the elephant in the room that it's a NATO war. And NATO is aligned with the United States. This is about our empire, our interests over there. It should have never gotten this far had we not decided to intervene in Eastern Europe there. And when
he seems to have the perspective that our country owes him.
Right.
Probably because they coerced him into letting this farce of a proxy war continue when people were trying to talk them into getting peace talks started.
When you look at the map and see how NATO has expanded to where it is now, right up against Russia's front yard, we have like a big river between the United States and Cuba, if you want to define it as backyards and, smaller land masses. Can you imagine how the United States would respond if Cuba, with Russia's support, decided to do more in our southern borders. We would not allow it. We freak out.
We had that. There was the Cuban Missile Crisis.
The Cuban Missile Crisis, for those that don't know their history and should, is pretty much what Russia was dealing with in terms of NATO allying with Ukraine and basically pushing the border right up to Russia's front yard. It shouldn't have happened. There was a safe buffer zone there that Russia should have been allowed, regardless of what your politics are, whether you like Putin, whether you think he's a madman, whatever. We're just as bad. And Zelensky talking about how, young
when
Americans.
He says we, he means the American military industrial complex and NATO.
Yeah, that are making money off of this. And I'm just bringing this all back to the original point of topic, All Quiet on the Western Front, which I would recommend people watch. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of it this weekend with my dad because he's a big history buff. So Sunday will be a good night to unwind and share that together. So,
yeah, Bay of Pigs.
Yep. Interesting. Screw Google. I remember hearing about a Star Trek episode where instead of fighting an actual war, they just ran a computer program that just executed the amount of people the algorithm predicted.
Yeah, that was on the original series. I remember that.
The Ultimate Computer, I think it was called. Maybe. Might not have the title.
I don't remember the name of the episode, but I remember the episode.
My dad watched Star Trek. I never really did. He absolutely loved it. I was threatened with beatings for the interesting in the 1980s. LOL. Well, look, I'm not interrupting. I was threatened with beatings for interrupting in the 1980s. Well, hey, Next Generation was a good show. I, of course, grew up on 1960s reruns of the original series with the original cast, which is why I tend to imitate our beloved captain of the Starship Enterprise, Captain William Tiberius Kirk, as portrayed by the affectations of William Shatner.
Some of you have a local channel that carries H&I TV, and they in the evenings show all of the series. And so they'll start with one episode of Star Trek, and then they'll go into Next Generation and then show DS9 and then Voyager and then Enterprise. And they're showing them in order.
Which channel is it?
Was it 20, not 26. It's one of those channels. H&I is I don't remember what the local channel number is, like 24 point something. But you can get it over the air on in a lot of places, and it's kind of nice if you're like just in the mood to start watching like a Star Trek series. You can hopefully catch it in one episode, and they'll just keep showing them sequentially through until you make it through. Some of the streaming channels have those as well.
Look who's joined us. Case Study QB. Welcome. Thanks for joining us tonight. Case, I had a great time with that New Year's Eve Day show that we did over with Carborough. So hopefully we can coordinate with you again and do some more collaboration. Lainey sends you her greetings as well. Look at all the love here on the corner.
Yeah, Case Study QB is doing the great service for people in independent media.
Absolutely.
He's over on Twitter, and he's actually being suppressed, which is crazy because all he does is just clip out fair use copies of stuff from other media sources. And so if you follow him on Twitter, just also hit the notification bell because because they don't want him pointing out that there are clips of things happening in news that we want to make you aware of.
They get lost.
They get aired once on those channels and then they're forgotten. And he's like, so people in independent media are very fortunate to have Case Study QB watching all these channels, so we don't have to, because it's got to be torturous for a lot of people to watch. I don't know how you do it, man.
Well, he's basically getting us the really important nuggets from all the news cycles by which we can, guide our commentary on cutting through the bullshit and getting to the point. So yes, thank you. So he shares. I'd love to come up to promote the Mutual Aid Party Initiative. Awesome. I'll reach out when we launch. We will be waiting for you. Lainey says only love comes from us real folks in Chicago. Could be true. Hey, yeah, there's a collaboration there. Lainey and Case Study, help her do a show on preparedness.
Oh, that would be a great show to watch.
Yeah. I do it for you guys. He does it for us. He's doing the work of God. It's for my lefties. And yeah, we are. Even though we're critical of both sides, I would definitely identify myself as true lefty. So much love to everybody out there. Ed, thanks again for another great show. This was like the we had the Tuesday night show, which was the gourmet dinner, and this was the what do we call this? What the thing that like tops it all off?
The Alka-Seltzer?
No. Could be that too.
This is the digestive part of the program. Where
right. If we had all the drinks,
because we're still recovering from all the drinks we had after celebrating Lightfoot's defeat there.
Yeah, this is the nightcap. This is the cap or the cherry, the icing on the cake of Tuesday was this show.
Sure.
I know. There's another metaphor I'm grasping for that my brain is not.
You bastards! Still mad at you.
Don't forget.
Nobody go to patreon.com/Chicago Corner. I don't want you supporting these bastards. They're why I lost. I'm forever blaming them. Follow me on LinkedIn.
The city, the flames are finally under control. Hopefully. All right, Ed, thanks for joining me tonight. I'm going to take us out. For everyone else out in the audience there, please remember as you go into the weekend to stay safe, watch out for each other, be vigilant. Thank you for coming out and voting and helping us at Chicago Corner defeat the dreaded Mayor Lori Lightfoot from another 4 years of this. It was a good turnout this time, especially in early voting. Not as much. We'd like to see it improve, but at least there was a worthy outpouring of voting to put us on hopefully a newer path, a different path, and we will see what happens in the runoff in April. So as we go into this weekend, please make sure to stay safe, Chicago, and I really thank all of you for joining us. We'll be back on Tuesday. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with our parting video, our goodbye to Lori Lightfoot. Lori, we hardly knew ye. Good riddance, Mayor Lightweight. And good night to Chicago. Stay safe.
How could you possibly even consider running for re-election as mayor of the city of Chicago after all the harm you caused?
I disagree with you fundamentally, and I don't think I need to address it and dignify your comments 1 second further. Next question.
Got another candidate today with Alderman Sawyer, just kind of reaction and maybe any kind of hints about when you might make a decision?
So, another day, another man who thinks he can do his job better than me. I'm just going to keep doing my work. I'm not going to worry about the folks who are jumping in. I think I feel very comfortable with the list of accomplishments. And what I got to do is just keep telling our story.
Now, I've directed Superintendent Brown to order all police districts to give special attention to these parties. And this is how it's going to be. We will shut you down. We will cite you. And if we need to, we will arrest you and we will take you to jail. Period.
It makes no sense for us to be increasing the speeds around parks and schools when we know what the horrific consequences are. I'm not going to get into the specifics. We continue to work with NASCAR to make sure that we minimize the disruption to traffic and that we minimize any damage to our roads. The level of excitement that I have seen from people that, frankly, were probably closeted NASCAR fans all across our city, I think it's off the charts.
Your office says that you invited black and brown journalists to this round of interview. Why?
As a woman of color, as a lesbian, it's important to me that diversity is put front and center.
What a fucking bitch, am I right?
We have the responsibility to review this process in an administration that is more worried about campaign contributions than doing the right thing for the city of Chicago.
You are out of order. You are out of order.
And
you are a liar. You are a liar, sir, and you are out of order. I sit here and I will not tolerate you besmirching the hard work of so many people who have worked in this. You may not agree. You may not agree, then vote no. I'm very confident in my reelection, and I'm very confident that what you will see is a range of support across the city. Any vote coming on the side for somebody not named Lightfoot is a vote for Chuy Garcia or Paul Bell. That's it. If you want them controlling your fate and your destiny, then stay home. Then don't vote. Take your torches and go.
Are you, as an incumbent, running as an underdog?
No, look, well, first of all, I'm a black woman. I'm always running as an underdog. Let's just be clear about that. I'm feeling very good. A lot of people that we saw over the course of the weekend in different parts of the city said that they were going to honor their normal tradition in voting on Election Day. So I'm excited about that. 4 years ago this time, polling showed that I was about 1%. And, you know, there were bigger names in, more money, and here I sit.
Stunning defeat for Mayor Lightfoot, who got just over 16% of the vote.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. You will stop speaking. You will stop speaking. You're full of crap, and that's the nicest thing that I can say.
Get out. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
Oh, we did it. Cheers, Chicago.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.